morning and welcome to the Mike Graham Show. It's 7 o'clock. It's Friday the 13th of February. I'll just say that again for those of you not listening at the back. Friday the 13th. Does that mean anything to you? Does it mean that you're going to have a superstition? Are you going to make sure that you, I don't know, chuck some salt over your left shoulder, stroke the black cat to make sure, that's not a euphemism by the way, to make sure that everything's going to be fine for the rest of the day? Are you going to be careful how you drive out the driveway? Are you going to be careful about walking under any ladders? All of that sort of thing. We might have a conversation about Friday the 13th. I've got to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that life is just as bad this morning as it ever was. And I'm going to tell you a couple of stories on the front pages this morning as well. We've got a whole bunch of headlines about different things. But Keir Starmer's still very much in the dark brown stuff. He can't seem to escape from the scandal from which he has created, really, over the last couple of weeks. He's on the front page of the Times already because he's agreed to a £260,000 payout for a civil servant who he sacked because he thinks it's his fault that the vetting process on Peter Mandelson and also on that other Lord Doyle was wrong, right? What he's done is he's agreed to basically pay Sir Chris Warmold, who is the Cabinet Secretary, £260,000 of our money, right? It's our money. It's not his money. It's your money. It's my money. It belongs collectively to the people of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. But he's decided in an unprecedented move to overrule senior civil servants who basically said, look, you can't pay this guy this much money. It's not right. It's not justifiable. He's only been in the job for a year. Yes, he's been a civil servant for longer than that, but he's only been Cabinet Secretary. He was appointed by Starmer only a year ago, right? And now Starmer's decided to chuck him under the bus as the latest human sacrifice to try and save his own useless career. And according to the Times, Starmer is now planning to install Britain's first female Cabinet Secretary by replacing Sir Chris Warmold, funny name that, W-O-R-M-A-L-D, who's 57, with Dame Antonia Romeo. You know, Romeo and Juliet. She's the permanent secretary at the Home Office, but she's going to be also embroiled in a bit of scandal because apparently she's been accused of bullying when she served as Consul General to the UK in New York, right? Her former boss, Lord MacDonald of Salford, says there was evidence that she bullied staff and said there should be a full process started from scratch to appoint a new Cabinet Secretary. This is the most important job in the civil service. It can't be chosen on the fly. As usual, Keir Starmer has got it completely and utterly wrong, OK? But and as you would expect, you know, with these politicians, there's always a tweet, there's always a video, there's always a clip. So we're going to play you this clip from a little while ago when he was talking about how he always supports his staff if anything goes wrong.
Hear me out. I had 8,000 staff for 5 years as the Director of Public Prosecutions. And I acted, I hope, in the right way with them, which is when they had victories, I celebrated on their behalf. I picked up awards on their behalves. And when they made mistakes, I carried the can. I never turn on my staff, and you should never turn on your staff.
You should never turn on your staff. So far he's turned on his staff not once, not twice, but several times, because he sacked loads and loads of people. You know, he sacked more ministers, I think, than any Prime Minister in the first 2 years of his tenure, than anybody I've ever seen. He's just got rid of Morgan McSweeney, who was his Chief of Staff. He's now getting rid of this guy, the Cabinet Secretary, Sir Chris Warmold, who apparently found out that he was getting sacked at the weekend from media reports. So not only does Keir Starmer turn on his staff, he also deliberately throws them under the bus in order to save his own career, because his own career is going further and further down the gurgler. I mean, the Daily Mail, which hasn't got anything about Starmer on the front page, they've gone with this story, which is Labour opens the door to trans children in primary school. Labour last night opened the door to primary school children changing their gender. Long-awaited trans guidance for schools finally arrived yesterday, having been watered down from previous Tory proposals. I mean, it's such a ridiculous story. I'm not even sure we're going to get too stuck into that, but I'd be willing to take your views on it. Let's have a look at what it is that is being said inside the Mail about the clattering train, as I used to call it. Who is in charge of the clattering train? The government now has no Chief of Staff, no Cabinet Secretary or Head of Communications, and the Prime Minister said to care more about the dress code at meetings than policies. Yeah, Tim Shipman, the former political editor of the Sunday Times, has written a great piece in The Spectator, which I read last night, in which basically he describes Keir Starmer as a man who literally doesn't know what he's doing. That is his problem, right? We've got this. Starmer promised change, but the question now is whether he can change. Fundamentally, the Prime Minister cannot make a decision, stick to a decision, implement a decision, defend that decision when it gets tough, or explain that decision ever, says a senior figure close to number 10. The only thing I really care about at this point is who can beat Nigel Farage, says the strategist, and I don't think Keir Starmer can beat Nigel Farage. To most insiders, letting Keir be Keir is unlikely to be the solution. It is the problem. Or as one Westminster whip puts it, we have nothing to fear but Keir himself. And they're starting to talk about a Keir-tastrophe in Downing Street, right? Listen to how that's spelt. K-E-I-R. Keir-tastrophe. Because that's what we're looking at here. And the piece by Tim Shipman is fascinating because what it does is it lays bare the fact that Keir Starmer is not only a really, really hopeless leader, he's actually not a very bright bloke. He's not actually a very good manager of people. He's not actually a very good Prime Minister. And in fact, he's a pretty useless politician all round. And they say that he's more concerned about what people wear when they turn up for meetings than he is actually in what they've got to say. Extraordinary, isn't it? How future generations will curse our puppet Prime Minister in Paul Smith polo shirts is a big commentary in the Mail by Lord Daniel Hannan. Absolutely incredible that we've ended up in this place. I was talking to some people last night at an event I was at. A lot of people from Reform were there. And we were just saying, isn't it awful just how bad this government is? Because one, you can expect them to be, slightly unprepared for government. You can expect them to sort of learn on the fly. You can expect them to understand more about running the government once they've got in. But we all assumed we might not like what they were going to do. But we all assumed they would know what the hell they were doing, right? But of course, it turns out they have no idea what they're doing. The other story that's still kicking around, and we'll talk to Kelvin McKenzie about it this morning. We've got a great show for you, by the way, lined up. Jacob Rees-Mogg is coming in to the show, so we're going to hear from him on a whole barrage of topics, including the terrible state of the Prime Minister and Downing Street and the whole Labour government and the mess that they've created. But also, no doubt, we'll be talking about Sir Jim Ratcliffe because he's on the front page of the Times again, second day in a row. He's the boss of Manchester United, of course, who said that basically we have been colonised in this country by immigrants. Nigel Farage yesterday came out in support of him and said that he absolutely agreed with him and he's absolutely right. But of course, all of the sort of, pearl-clutching lefties were like, oh my God, he's used that word colonialist. He's used that word colonised. He's said something bad about immigrants. And we all know that immigration is the greatest thing ever. And it's the only thing that makes this country fantastic. And it's wonderful. I watched a bit of Question Time last night for my sins. I couldn't get through more than about half an hour of it. Because the bloody audience, right, were so ridiculous, so completely and utterly left-wing, that it was embarrassing. Good morning, Mike. Happy Friday the 13th. Lucky for some, says Margaret. Thank you, Margaret, for that. Send us your, I was going to say Snapchats. We don't do that. No, that's for teenagers. Send us your super chats. That's what I meant. So here's the story. Football chiefs have now stepped in after Jim Ratcliffe kicks off over migration. We're now seeing people from the FA somehow getting involved, right? The comments sparked outrage among politicians and at Manchester United. I was listening to, again, I don't know why I do this. It's almost like I'm some kind of masochist. BBC 5 Live yesterday afternoon, and they were talking to some football blogger who was going on and on about how terrible it was that the man that runs Manchester United or that partially owns it is basically having a go at immigrants because half the team or 3/4 of the team are immigrants. Yeah, well, that's not quite the same thing, is it? Are you really going to tell me that you're going to actually equate multi-millionaire footballers who come to this country and play in the Premier League for a few years are the same as people jumping off boats illegally on the beaches at Dover? I don't think so. The club has distanced itself from Ratcliffe. In an official statement, they reaffirmed their commitment to diversity and inclusion. I mean, maybe they could get their football fans to actually say what they think, because the fans, I'm sure, might agree with Jim Ratcliffe. Manchester United prides itself on being an inclusive and welcoming club. Our diverse group of players, staff and global community of supporters reflect the history and heritage of Manchester, a city that anyone can call home. Andy Burnham, the Mayor of Greater Manchester, was among those calling for Ratcliffe to withdraw his remarks. And he said this: these comments go against everything for which Manchester has traditionally stood. Keir Starmer, of course, called for him to apologise as well. But Jacob Jacob Rees-Mogg was quoted yesterday, and we'll ask him about this when we see him, was quoted yesterday as saying, does Keir Starmer have any moral authority whatsoever to tell people to apologise for anything? I don't think he does, and neither does Jacob, and that is entirely as it should be. A lot of people were very critical of Ratcliffe yesterday because he doesn't live in the UK. Really? So what? So he's become an immigrant in another country? Surely that's a good thing, isn't it? He's gone to Monaco, where immigrants are very welcome as long as they bring a bucket load of money with them and they buy a very nice, expensive apartment. The amount of hypocrisy in this country now is absolutely sickening. So now the FA says it's going to look into the Manchester United co-owners' comments and see what they can do about it. These are the same people, by the way, who suggested it was a good idea to take the knee. Do you remember that? When every single football match was started by a load of people taking the knee, and they took the knee in order to stop racism. Doesn't seem to have worked terribly well, does it? So now they've given up trying to stop racism. So where does that leave us? I think the last thing we need is any lessons from the governing body of football about what people's views on immigration or anything else should be. But again, what this does is it illustrates very well and very clearly what's going wrong in Britain. I did a podcast yesterday with Rob Moore, which is going to come out in the next couple of weeks. And he said to me, do you think freedom of speech is still available to people in this country? And I said, no, I don't think it is, because people are frightened to talk about certain subjects. They're frightened to say certain things. And on Question Time last night, there was a Tory MP who was very reasonable, who said, you know, there is a problem with immigration in this country. And it was almost as if he had said, you know, let's burn the witch. People were turning on him. The panel were turning on him. There was a woman from the Green Party who I've had a couple of run-ins with, an MP, who's completely useless and stupid. And the Green Party, of course, think there should be open borders. And Fiona Bruce actually asked her and said, well, what do you mean by that? Should you just stop people coming in willy-nilly, or should you just let everybody come in? And she couldn't really answer the question because, of course, the Green Party don't have a clue about what they're doing. But in the end, this guy was vilified because he actually had the temerity to suggest that immigration might not be the greatest idea we've ever had, because it's all gone a bit wrong. Other headlines we've got this morning is on the front page of The Sun. It's all about Prince Andrew, formerly known as Prince Andrew. Andy girl flown to the UK on Epstein's Lolita Express. Pressure is mounting on police to launch a sex trafficking probe into Andrew Mountbatten Windsor amid claims a woman was flown in on Jeffrey Epstein's private jet and sneaked into Buckingham Palace. Ex-Prime Minister Gordon Brown has said that 90 flights on Epstein's Lolita Express came into the UK, carrying girls from around the world. He called it by far the biggest scandal of all. Well, how does Gordon Brown know? And if he does know, why didn't he tell us earlier? It says inside the paper, a mystery woman lying on the floor with former Prince Andrew crouching over at Jeffrey Epstein's mansion is a sex trafficking victim. You remember the picture. This is a claim from a senior US politician, right? California Congressman Ted Lieu made the allegation at a fiery congressional hearing as he pressed US Attorney General Pam Bondi on why the former royal has never been prosecuted. So there's a lot of pressure building around Andrew and what he does as to whether he goes to America to give evidence to a congressional committee or whether he turns up at Thames Valley Police and is questioned, basically, because, you know, the story came out in The Sun yesterday that the payoff that was made to Virginia Giuffre by Andrew, thought to be around 11 million quid, was contributed to by several members of the royal family, including King Charles, where they had a sort of whip round, right? And the King in the Times today is denying that and saying we did not give any money to Andrew in order to help him to pay off this woman, which might take the heat off the King for a while, but not forever. Let's have a look at a couple of other clips, shall we? There's a couple of other stories to do. Rachel Reeves yesterday, also talking about Jim Ratcliffe, said, of course, the magic words, diversity is our strength. Have a look.
Look, Jim Ratcliffe can speak for himself, but the comments that he made yesterday were unacceptable. Our country benefits hugely from its diversity. We see that in our businesses, we see that in our universities, we see that in our cultural life, and we are richer because of the diversity of our country. So I would urge him to apologise for his offensive remarks, which have upset a lot of people, and just frankly do not represent, I think, the views in modern Britain today.
What does she know about the views of modern Britain today? And by the way, what's it got to do with her, what somebody's opinion is? You know, to say that somebody's opinion is unacceptable from this Labour government is ridiculous, right? And some very intelligent people have come out in favour of what Jim Ratcliffe said, and if not in favour of it, at least in favour of his, right to say it. Simon Jordan, who was in the news earlier this week talking about women's football, and Eni Aloko, not least, at Talk Sport, also had something to say about Ratcliffe. Have a look.
United's website, meantime, celebrates the fact that Manchester is a city famed for its embrace of immigrants. Mm-hmm. So tell me, after you've heard Sir Jim talking on Sky News, what's your reaction?
So let's pare this back a little bit. I think the term of colonisation is probably clumsy. But if you look at the underlying sentiment, put aside the analysis that he's misquoted some figures, because the population in 2000 was 58 million. The population in the UK is 70 million in 2025, which means we've had a 21% increase, 20 to 21% increase in our population. The population of Europe has gone from 728 million to 744 million, which means Europe as a continent has had a 2% increase in population. You then distill down the German population increase, the Italian, the Spanish, the French. No one has had a population explosion like we have. So to go to the sentiment about the population, irrespective of whether he said 2020 or 2000, he is right. The population explosion, however it's manifested itself, has created a strain on this country. Then you go to the sentiment of the open border policy that various governments have deployed in regards to people coming into this country, and you look at that and see the challenge. So he's not wrong to say 9 million people on benefits on the welfare state is a challenge for this country. He's not wrong to say that foreign-born residents of this country make up a disproportionate amount of people on benefits in this country. He's also, if you look at his history, and I'm not defending some of the things he said, because I think colonisation is a strong terminology, but you could ask certain people around this country.
It's a wrong terminology.
You could ask certain people around this country that might hold that view. If you went to towns like Bedford or to Luton, if you went to the towns surrounding Aston Villa Stadium, where a particular community decided that an Israeli football club weren't to come to that particular stadium.
No, hang on a minute. One of the many brilliant things you do well in this show is your choice of words. And I'm not buttering you up, but that's why people love you. The way you express yourself, and people identify with you on that.
Yeah.
The choice of the word colonisation. Hang on. Up his words here.
But you haven't let me finish my point.
Settling and establishing control over the indigenous people of an area.
But you haven't let me finish my point. What I said, there were certain people. First of all, he's not a politician. Second of all, Keir Starmer is a snivelling coward, because Keir Starmer said in his speech at this time last year, this is a country full of strangers. Right, which people then index back to the Enoch Powell speech, right? And because there was political capital or political shrapnel in that, he pared back from that conversation and apologised for it.
Let's talk about
Jim Ratcliffe. Jim Ratcliffe is not a politician.
He's not a politician.
So he doesn't need to apologise.
Well, there'll be plenty of people at Talk Sport who now don't think Simon Jordan should be on the air, because they'll be saying, hang on a minute, he's having a go at immigrants. He's having a go. He's supporting Jim Ratcliffe. The FA have said that, he shouldn't have said what he said. Keir Starmer has said that he chose the wrong words, that he should apologise. Let's talk to Kelvin McKenzie, ex-editor of The Sun and media titan, of course. Kelvin, very good morning to you. Morning, Kelvin.
Yeah, hello, man. How are you?
Yeah, very well indeed. Very well indeed. This Ratcliffe story seems to be catching fire for a second day. Because of the people who have condemned him, including the Prime Minister, including Rachel Reeves. We're going to talk to Jacob Rees-Mogg later on in the show. He said yesterday, what kind of moral authority does this government have, and does Keir Starmer have, to tell anyone what to say and what to think?
Okay, well, I'm a massive fan of Jacob Rees-Mogg. People completely get the wrong end of the stick. They think he's a languid toff, actually, an enormously bright guy.
Yeah.
And why either Nigel Farage or Kemi Badenoch are beating down the door to make absolutely sure that he's on board for the next election, or actually in his previous seat down in Somerset, where
Yeah.
there is an uncomfortable issue where the local MP is currently been under arrest now for the thick end of 18 months and yet to be charged. And the minute that if he is charged if he's convicted, he may be innocent, who knows? Then I'm afraid, then I'm delighted to say that Nigel will be standing for somebody. And to Nigel on the News UK issue. So I was the founder of Talksport,
Yes.
but regrettably, I didn't find the talent of Simon Jordan. That was found by somebody else, a good friend of mine, Lee Clayton. Look, the pressure within News UK is massive, right? Because the one thing they're scared about, I mean, Simon delivers a massive audience to Talksport. Massive audience. It's the only show that everybody talks about. Okay. However, this is the rub. What News UK are worried about is that the advertising, the media buyers won't buy anything that sounds slightly to the right. Had Jordan delivered his thought processes and was able to come at some of these issues from the right, from the left. Or the trouble is that when you do it from any other version that's not the left, you're considered the right. You're not considered, oh, there's a sensible guy. We're going to have to go with that.
Yeah.
So it's difficult. The Ratcliffe thing is nothing at all. I mean, we all want. Do you know one of the arguments that made me most laugh? Absolutely made me most laugh was that that the Manchester United players might be upset.
Right.
By the way, can you hear me all right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, carry on.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I
Okay,
can.
fine.
Yeah.
Okay, so the issue there is that all of those guys are migrants, right? They are on short-term contracts and they make a hell of a load of money, and we're very happy to have them. That is not the same as a load of unskilled, illegal workers, unwanted in our own country and heading straight to the unemployment list. The arguments that are being made are completely specious, and they're being done for one particular reason. It's called Gorton and Denton. Labour are just about to take the most enormous kicking in Manchester on, I think it's January the 22nd. What date have we right now? It's February the 13th today.
Yeah.
So in 2 weeks' time, when you do your show on the 23rd, you will be welcoming the Greens in, and the reason for that is that the Muslims will vote to a man and to a woman for the Greens as a kind of V sign towards Starmer and all the madness that's going on our payroll and with our vote. And so what they're doing is they're saying, look, we're all very friendly with you guys.
We're just getting a bit of interference on the old line there.
And that is the reason that this is being done in such a massive way. And so there's some very good points being made. For instance, why is Starmer saying we are a proud nation? Actually, we're not in that statement afterwards. We're not a proud nation. One of the problems is we've completely lost our confidence, right? Yes, I remember when growing up, people used to say we've lost an empire, but we haven't found a cause. Yeah. Now we've lost an empire, haven't found a cause, but have found a load of debts and a load of people coming to the country who seem to be going straight on the benefits list. Right? This can't be right. And other point that Ratcliffe was made, there are difficult decisions to be made. I remember when I ran Talk, we ran into a financial squall. Right? We had a massive problem and had a pay cut, right?
Yeah.
So, and the effect of that was that a lot of people, quite rightly, didn't like me. I took a 20% pay cut, by the way, so it wasn't. Radcliffe has just done the same at Manchester United. He's let a whole load of people go, including Sir Alex Ferguson, who was getting paid £2 million a year to be an ambassador for Manchester United. Now, he took it on the chin, just said, yeah, quite understand. Okay. But it gave the left the sense, oh, well, you're horrible to the little people. And I noticed that little squirt, Neville, came out and basically indicated that, I'd like to see, look, I like the fact that Gary Neville is successful. I just don't like his politics.
No.
I don't know how.
Well, he also took several wheelbarrows full of cash out of Manchester United, for all of his socialist principles, and he was thank you very much indeed. So that is part of the problem. But here we have, it's just more hypocrisy at the end of the day, Kelvin, isn't it? We've got all these people clutching their pearls saying, oh, you can't say that about immigrants because immigrants are our strength. You saw Rachel Reeves talking about how we are very proud of our diversity. Immigration makes us what we are. They're coming out with all this stuff all the time now, and people don't agree with them.
Well, I think the other issue that comes in it, right? We have to embrace the people that are here. That we simply stop anybody else coming in here, and we have literally a barrier around our country for the next 5 years while we try and assimilate those that are entitled to stay. We have to actually stop anybody else coming in under any circumstances. If you look at our density per square mile in our country, it's a factor of about 7 higher than the United States, and it's much higher than places like France or Germany, which have lots of space. We have no space. We have no space to park our cars. We haven't even got enough car parks to park our cars. We literally, in the Tony Hancock days, it'll only be the tall people with big noses.
Well, quite.
Survive.
Yeah.
Dramatic.
Yeah, exactly right. Let's talk a bit about Angela Rayner, because she's on the front page of The Telegraph this morning after turning on Keir Starmer yesterday, saying basically that he's got it wrong on hospitality, and what we need to do is reverse the increase in minimum wage, reverse all the taxes that are being put on pubs and allow them to breathe. So she's thrown the first punch, has she not, in the sort of leadership battle?
Oh, yeah, right. So Cabinet Authority has now collapsed, right?
Yeah.
The game is the game's completely up. Starmer is sitting there now. Instead of telling the Cabinet what he wants to do, they are telling him what they want him to do, right? They want him to shut up. And so you've got Rayner saying what she likes. You've got Lisa Nandy complaining about the place drips with misogyny, right? You've got Ed Miliband saying you can't sack me, Yabu, and the only person sitting there thinking I must carry on following the rules is Rachel Reeves.
Yeah,
and that's because she knows that when she's slung out, that there are no jobs. Normally, what happens when you're a chancellor, you take that right, the guy purchase when you're a landlord, a totally ridiculous idea and doesn't happen in any other industry, right? You're always allowed to put your borrowing interest against your profitability. And anyway, so when Rachel Reeves gets flung out, will this be the shortest queue outside? The other short queue in that country is Welsh entrepreneurs, right? There is nobody in Wales currently making any money, right? What they're doing, they're all working for the government, and if they're not working for the government, they've got to hand out to the government, i.e. you and I.
Yeah.
It's about, I keep on saying this, give Wales to the Hong Kong Chinese. There's 300,000 of them. They are hardworking people with access to money, because in China, they will be giving it all to their, to have it outside comers in China. So, cabinet authority is broken down. You'll see lots more examples of this. And the other person that's done very well out of this is Burnham, who started to give his views again. Who cares what he thinks? So the luckiest thing that ever happened to him was that he dodged the bullet, didn't he?
Yeah.
He didn't get Gorton and Denton. Had he got Gorton and Denton, he wouldn't be the mayor of Greater Manchester, and he wouldn't be the Labour MP.
No.
He'd be wandering around in the desert shouting out, "My name's Andy Burnham. Have you got any work? And have you got any money?" The whole of the Labour, this is what I'm really looking forward to. I know it's terrible for everybody, and I know we've got 3 years of nightmare because the cabinet and the government will move left. And when you hear the expression "move left," and your viewers will know this, what that means is you are going to have to put your hand in your pocket for people you've never met, don't care for, don't believe their story, and your taxes are going to subsidize their life. We are subsidy junkies in our country, and it's time we came to an end. And if we don't do it, that people wonder, why are we skinned? Look at the size of our government. Look at the things we've got to achieve. We have got to try and get to 5%.
Yeah.
Do more tax, Mike. Does anybody you know want to pay more tax? Are you capable of paying more tax?
I don't think I can pay more tax. No, I don't think so. I don't want to pay any more bleeding tax. One final point, because the line is breaking up a little bit. Donald Trump yesterday got given permission by a court in Florida to continue on with his case against the BBC. And it looks as though the BBC is now going to have to supply documentation as to how they did what they did and why they did what they did, which I reckon is going to expose them to a whole litany of accusations that they're biased, that they are anti-Trump, and that they are not a reliable news organisation any longer. And I fear... I don't fear, because I hope, in a way, I hope it happens to them, but it's our money. They're going to get done for quite a lot of money. They're going to have to settle this for millions, aren't they?
They're going to have to settle, and they'd be wise just to say to
Yeah.
what do you want?
I think we might have finally lost Kelvin there. Sorry about the line. A couple of people are saying, get everybody else to get off the internet so that Kelvin can be heard. You know, it's one of those unfortunate things that in life, sometimes the line isn't as good as it ought to be. I think we've got to leave Kelvin. Leave Kelvin. He looks as if he's about to be sent to his execution. Listen, Kelvin, we'll get back to you. We'll see you next week, because we're going to have you in the studio.
Okay.
But listen, thanks very much indeed. A bit of an interrupted line there, so apologies for that. Got lots of people, pedants on the chat line, talking about how the sound's really bad. Yeah, I know. The thing is, we like to hear what Kelvin Mackenzie's got to say, because he's got a lot of very good things to say. And when you can hear him, it's absolutely brilliant. So I do apologise for some of those interruptions. But, you know, the trouble is you've got to persevere. And this is live broadcasting. Sometimes things don't go quite according to plan. This one from Lord Viking, who says, Kelvin should be a regular on Plank of the Week. Funnily enough, you mentioned Plank of the Week. We're going to come to that because we've got a little clip for you. Plank of the Week goes out, of course, tonight at 7 o'clock, followed tomorrow night, Saturday, by Plonk of the Week. And what I've said about today's show is that we're going to be celebrating a couple of things. One, it's Friday the 13th, so I want to hear whether or not you've got any particular superstitions that you're going to be taking part in today. But it's also Valentine's Day tomorrow, which doesn't mean much to me, to be fair. It's not something I particularly buy into. But an awful lot of people will have messages that they want to give to other people. So if you've got any messages that you want to send us, particularly on Super Chats, we can read them out for Valentine's Day tomorrow, right? Also, we've got a poll, and I don't know, Charlotte, have we got the poll up and running? Because I haven't seen it actually on the old, what is it?
There's some super chats, Mike.
Oh, some super chats, okay. Show me some super chats and I'll read them out. And then we'll tell you what the poll's all about, because that's going to be up there any second now. Coming up later on the show, Nigel Evans is going to be here. Rafe Heidel-Mancu is going to be here as well. And we'll be talking to him about his book, which was on my desk yesterday, but seems to have now disappeared. Jacob Rees-Mogg as well coming up. Lovely super chat from Simon. Thank you very much indeed, Simon. Good to see you. One from Cindy Smith, best presenter in the world and the funniest. Thank you very much indeed. And then one from from Easy Boy. Hi, Mike, Pooch and Charlotte. Another great week. Congratulations on a fantastic show. And here's one from It's Just Dave. Mike, it's a distraction from the Mandelson scandal. Jim was right, and most of us United fans agree. Jim had to apologise for the stadium project. We know he speaks the truth. United, keep going. That's on the Jim Ratcliffe front. Yeah, this is the thing. I mean, you know, there's an awful lot of hypocrites around the football business, right? Football is a working class game. And it's always been a working class game. The fact that the prawn sandwich brigade, as Roy Keane once described them, have kind of taken over in Manchester United is what's ruined some of the clubs in the Premier League. And I think everybody who's a genuine football fan knows that. And most football fans would agree very much with what Jim Ratcliffe said. You know, it might well be that the wokeists who have kind of moved in, and some of those might be on Talk Sport, don't like it. But that doesn't mean that they speak for the club or they speak for the fans. John says this, Kelvin sounds like Norman Collier. That's one for the teenagers. You might not know who that is. Yeah, I'm sorry, again, as I say, I apologise for the sound. It's not quite what it should have been. So anyway, listen, I suppose you might say this is a bit of a Valentine's Day themed poll that we've got working at the moment. Which of these sentences would turn you off your Valentine? Number 1, have you ever been to Sandringham? Number 2, come back to my island. Number 3, look at my didgeridoo, or have you seen it? And number 4, how's about that then? In the style of Jimmy Savile. Sorry, I probably shouldn't have said that. But anyway, look, so far the poll is actually pretty neck and neck. We've got 27% for have you ever been to Sandringham, 27% for come back to my island, 26% for how's about that then, and 21% for look at my didgeridoo. I think it's all a bit tasteless, isn't it? I don't like Valentine's Day, I must admit. And I used to hate having to go out on Valentine's Day because it's one of the worst nights or days of your life because you pay through the nose to go to a restaurant where they've got a special Valentine's Day menu where they charge you more money than you've ever seen. They offer you a free glass of champagne and then, you know, give you a bill for about twice as much as you thought. And then you end up probably having a row. So, you know, I wouldn't bother. But if you are doing something and you do want to send messages and you do want to wish your loved one well, by all means, feel free to do it. You know what to do. Just join in on the chat and you can send us a super chat, of course, as well. On the newspaper front, we've been telling you what's on the front pages, but there's also a few other stories inside that I'm going to tell you about as well. Basically, got on the front page of the Daily Telegraph as Angela Rayner talking about how she thinks that the policies that have been introduced by Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer around pubs are actually wrong. The big story that we're going to talk about with Jacob Rees-Mogg and others is the Prime Minister agreeing to a £260,000 payout for a sacked civil servant, right? The civil service actually said you can't give him that much money, and he overruled them, which is extraordinary. There's more news on the bonking NATO ambassador on the front page of the Daily Mail. Britain's top NATO envoy, 55, and an imbroglio with Italian intern nearly half his age. There's a picture of her in a bikini on the front page. They've done a massive big page 5 on it. Britain's ambassador to NATO has reportedly left diplomats astonished by moving an Italian intern into his official residence. Senior figures have raised concerns that Angus Lapsley, 55, a father of 2, is dating his 29-year-old assistant Francesca Cortini. The pair are understood to have met 2 years ago while she was gaining experience at NATO HQ. Certainly was. Not so long after Mr. Lapsley narrowly avoided the sack for leaving 50 pages of top-secret documents at a bus stop in Kent. It's a very Valentine's Day kind of story, that, isn't it? We've got also Tony Blair on the front page of the Daily Telegraph saying scrap the North Sea oil ban, because after all, it might be Ed Miliband's baby, but the great idea is to get as much money coming into this country as possible, because we haven't got any, and to get as much energy coming into this country as possible, because we haven't got any. And instead of relying on electricity and wind farms, what we need to do is actually exploit the North Sea. Even Tony Blair thinks that's a good idea, for heaven's sake. Goodness gracious me. Also, we'll be talking about Heathcliff. There's a new movie coming out, Wuthering Heights. Apparently, a BBC presenter has come out, and I kid you not, said this, basically that he's not, he's too white. Heathcliff is too white, and he shouldn't be white, because apparently during the time of Heathcliff, who is a fictitious character, fictional character even, there was a lot of colonisation going on. She should talk to Jim Ratcliffe about that. And apparently, he should have been cast as somebody with darker skin. Why can't they just leave it all alone? And finally, in The Sun, on page 11, I don't know whether you've seen adverts for Peppa Pig, but Peppa Pig, which is obviously a children's TV show and also now a touring stage show, has in wherever it is they're going, the Grimsby Auditorium in Lincolnshire, a county famed for its sausages. They've banned sausages and bacon and pork products because an animal rights charity say that Peppa's growing family and all the residents of Peppertown need to be protected. So they're going to be selling vegan ham sandwiches on the menu when they go into the audience to give them things to eat. Absolutely ridiculous. I mean, people have gone, this is the most ridiculous idea that anybody's heard. People for the ethical treatment of animals are saying that they're delighted at their request being granted for the shows on March the 3rd and March the 4th. I think we can all agree it's contradictory to cheer for a fictional pig family on stage while real pigs are enduring miserable lives and terrifying deaths with the bacon and sausages served up in the theatre's cafe. I mean, are these people completely deranged? You know, there is a difference between fictional pigs walking around on stage and talking to each other and people eating bacon sarnies, aren't they? Spring Fauna has sent us a super chat. My dog is my favourite Valentine. She's a cheap date and I love her grunty pug face. Really. I'll tell you what I'm going to do, actually. Here's something that you haven't seen before. You know, we've been talking about the Winter Olympics this week and how useless it is and how terrible it is to watch. Well, we found somebody who actually enjoys watching the Winter Olympics, and it was sent to me by Ursula yesterday evening, and we're going to play it for you now. This is someone watching the Winter Olympics and really, really liking it. The cat's brilliant, isn't it? The cat's literally, you know, aping the brushing of the ice with the curling. I mean, I said earlier this week I can't stand watching it, but if you had a cat watching it, I'd watch the cat watching it. If you know what I mean, it would make it far more interesting. Coming up tonight at 7 o'clock, we've got Plank of the Week. We've got Jasmine Birtles for the first time. We've got Nigel Evans for the first time, the former Deputy Speaker of the House of Commons. He's going to be talking to me in a minute. And we've also got Lewis Schaefer for the second time. He was terribly misbehaving as well as he always does. But let's have a look. Here's a preview of what you can see tonight. No, I love the snow because at least in America, when it's cold like that and there's precipitation, as they call it, the sky's blue. Yeah, you know, and you have this beautiful kind of sunshine and snow, and you know, I don't mind that at all. And also, they know how to deal with it. Well, my sister lives in Connecticut, and you know, the gritters are out. You know, even before the snow started falling, and she has a house on kind of a little road in this little town, and the guys come around and plough her drive so that she can drive out whenever she wants.
Here, you just need 2 centimetres.
You get 2 centimetres and all the airports shut down, trains don't go anywhere.
Schools closed, the whole
London gets shut. I remember they shut the tube once when it snowed, and I said to the guy, it's literally underground. Why are you shutting it? And he's like, well, some of it isn't. And it's like, well, can't you just run the bit that is?
They closed the airports once in Heathrow and Gatwick because there was a threat of snow.
Oh, for goodness sake.
It wasn't even snowing.
Well, we now live in that ridiculous kind of world where, if there's any health and safety issue which might, result in somebody slipping, they have to shut everything down.
It's a shame we don't have a minister in the government that is taking climate change serious. Oh, hold on. Ed Miliband.
Ed Miliband, He's not on the list this week.
Amazing. He should be.
You're safe, Ed. You're safe.
I was waiting for someone to mention climate change. That's as big a bogus thing as COVID thing. The whole thing is a scam.
Totally
and do you actually believe in climate change? And that's the problem. That is the problem with the Tories.
Well, I'll tell you what,
you believe the same thing that the other guys believe.
It used to be called global warming.
Yes.
And then people like me used to say, I guess if the price of us having a nice weather in Britain is we're going to lose Venice, it's a price I'm prepared to pay.
Genevieve says, Mike hasn't changed his tie for Plank. I mean, okay, it's a bit pedantic, isn't it? Yeah. Could that be pedant of the day? We'll still be running that, of course, all the way through. Coming up, Nigel Evans is going to join us, and we're going to do Heron of the Day. But first, let's get some news with Edward Hughes.
Good morning, all. Here's the news with me, Edward Hughes. Friday the 13th in the United Kingdom, February 13th, 2026. What a delightfully ominous way to kick off the weekend. Because if the calendar wasn't already mocking us, the headlines certainly are. Let's dive in, shall we? First up, Sir Keir Starmer clings on like superglue in Downing Street. After dodging what passed for a coup, mostly hot air and a quick U-turn from Scottish Labour's Anna Sarwar, he's now solemnly vowing he's not prepared to walk away from my mandate. How inspiring. Nothing says unbreakable resolve like insisting you're still here while the party eyes the exits. Next up, the Gorton and Denton by-election on the 26th, where Labour could finish a respectable third if things keep going this way. Leadership at its finest. Meanwhile, the Church of England has finally euthanized its endless Living in Love and Faith project. Years of heated debate ending in allowing blessing prayers for same-sex couples, but only bolted onto existing services like an embarrassed afterthought. No standalone blessings, no gay married clergy, just a weary, we're done, and a pivot to funding interfaith chats. Because when everyone's still furious, the solution is obviously more polite ecumenical tea parties. Progress. Over in immigration land, the Home Office beams about stopping 40,000 small boat attempts since the election, with returns nearing 60,000. Bravo. Except the boats haven't exactly retired. Over 41,000 arrivals in 2025. Plus another 1,000 or so already this year, January alone, clocking nearly 1,000. The France pilot? Working wonders. If wonders are counted in the low hundreds swap back. Bearing down clearly means stern press releases while the crossings tick on. Groundhog Day with extra bureaucracy. And finally, the economy delivered a thrilling 0.1% growth in Q4 2025. Same limp crawl as before, missing forecasts, business investment tanking, services flatlining. A whole 1.3% for the year, because why aim higher? FTSE futures perked up slightly this morning on the sheer excitement. That's your lot, short, sharp, and suitably cynical. Stay caffeinated, sidestep any stubborn mandates, and remember, on Friday the 13th, if the news feels this underwhelming, at least the bad luck is on brand. Back after the break. Remember to like and subscribe. Laters Tigers.
Yes, do remember to like and subscribe. It's a bit long today, isn't he? Old Edward Hughes with the news. We might have to cut him short because people will get upset. Morning, Mike. Another excellent show. The Simon Jordan clip should be replayed again for those who missed it, says Roberts. He would be a great guest on the show. Keep up the great work. Yeah, we might try and get Simon on, actually, because he's always got some very interesting things to say, and he's a very, very welcome addition to the world of talk, basically, and opinion, because, frankly, there's not enough people out there who actually give their opinion and tell everybody what they think. One of the stories this morning that's all over the papers, it's on the front pages of a couple of them, is Labour opens the door to trans children in primary school. Instructions drawn up by now Tory leader Kemi Badenoch forbade primary schools from changing pupils' pronouns, but the government's guidance has scrapped the ban, instead saying that those as young as 4 should be allowed full social transition. I mean, this is crazy, right? To the opposite gender, albeit in rare circumstances. Other sections have been deleted, including edicts that secondary pupils should change their pronouns only on very few occasions, that no teacher or pupil should be compelled to use the new pronouns, and that teachers should not be stopped from saying boys and girls. Last night, campaigners said the guidance puts pupils at risk by encouraging the dangerous fairy tale that children changing gender is possible. That's mad, isn't it? Where did this all come from? We spoke yesterday to a campaigner who was not happy about Wes Streeting's plan to basically put in the possibility that school children, and possibly young school children, certainly in primary school, could get puberty blockers to change their sex or to change their development, if you like. Front page of the Times, the same. Pupils able to change their gender at school. Pupils will be allowed to change their gender at school and use different pronouns, including in some rare instances when they're as young as 4 years old. And this is, of course, guidance issued by Bridget Phillipson, the Education Secretary, ghastly woman, who says that children will be allowed to use pronouns of the opposite sex, but only after schools have consulted with parents. It says clinical advice should be taken into account. Primary schools are told to exercise particular caution because allowing children to change their gender can put them on an irrevocable pathway and have significant lasting effects. That's what our guest said yesterday. We would expect support for full social transition, including changing names, pronouns and uniforms, to be agreed very rarely. But the problem is, once you say that you're going to agree to do it, it won't be rare, will it? Because in schools, one of the problems that teachers have reported to me and some parents have reported to me is that basically once one person decides they want to do something, a lot of other people will go along. And we've got this from Mary, who says, in my hairdresser's son's school, a pupil identifies as a cat. She's only 6 years old. I blame the parents. Absolutely right. Let's talk to Nigel Evans, who is, of course, the former Deputy Speaker of the House of Commons. He's going to be on Plank of the Week tonight as well. We get a double dose of you, Nigel, this week, so we're very fortunate. It looks as if you're in a very nice part of the world. Where are you?
Well, I decided, Mike, seeing as democracy was such a shambles in the United Kingdom, I'd come to the home of democracy. And so you've got the Acropolis over my shoulder. I'm in Athens in Greece. And I mean, things are a shambles, let's be fair.
Yeah, they really are. I mean, I want to talk to you about a whole bunch of things this morning, but let's start off with the latest sacking from Downing Street of Sir Chris Warmold, the Cabinet Secretary, who apparently found out about being sacked at the weekend when he read it in a paper. Keir Starmer has agreed to pay him £260,000 as a payoff, which is obviously taxpayers' money. The civil service objected and said, we don't think you can do that, and he's overruled them.
Yeah, they forced him into what is called a direction, which meant that they didn't want their fingerprints on it because they didn't believe that Sir Chris had done anything wrong. There was no reason to sack him. After all, he'd only been put in a year ago by Sir Keir Starmer. Yeah. He is the person that Sir Keir actually chose. And it appears in this no-blame culture that Keir Starmer lives in, that he's blaming, well, not himself, clearly, but he blames other people, and he's blaming, he's blaming Sir Chris for the reason that Peter Mandelson wasn't properly vetted. But the reality was that Sir Chris only came in 4 days before the announcement of Peter Mandelson becoming the ambassador was actually made. So I don't think the buck stops with Sir Chris. But plenty of bucks are stopping with Sir Chris because it's £260,000. That's a massive sum of money. And this has been absolutely directed by Sir Keir Starmer. And it's us, the taxpayer, that are actually picking up that tab. And as Sir Chris leaves Downing Street and Whitehall, he's being replaced by 3 people. It's a case of 1 out, 3 in. It's a little bit like the Keir Starmer immigration policy deal that he did with the French. I mean, it's absolutely bonkers, Mike. And it looks to me as if there is one of the 3 that is his favourite. But we've already got another former senior civil servant saying, are you really sure about that? Shouldn't we really have an open selection? And that's what the civil service are wanting. But Keir, as usual, has got it in his head that this is the one. It's somebody called Dame Antonia Romeo. It's a fantastic name. That's the one that he wants, and that's the one that he's pushing.
Yeah, absolutely right. Maybe find somebody called Juliet as well and have the full set. You know, but apparently now there's 3 seriously important jobs, including Director of Communications, Cabinet Secretary, and I think Chief of Staff in Downing Street. There's nobody doing any of those jobs at the moment. So it's kind of a rudderless campaign, a rudderless Prime Minister, and a rudderless country, isn't it?
Well, I think there was a Number 10 briefing the other day, and journalists were asking who's doing what job, and the spokesman on behalf of the Prime Minister couldn't really answer, even though asked multiple times. I think the Chief of Staff one there again, Morgan and Sweeney out the door, and he's been replaced by a couple of people as well. And so none of it's really making any sense. You're absolutely right about the rudderless bit, except there's lots of rudders, so it's all going in all sorts of directions. But the real fear as to where the rudder is going, now that Morgan McSweeney's gone, is that the party is going to lurch to the left. And what did we see yesterday? But Angela Rayner has reappeared. She's gone up to Liverpool to make a speech about how dear the hospitality industry is to her, at the same time as giving a sideswipe to Rachel Reeves, who's done as much as she possibly can to close as many pubs as she can in a short space of time.
Well, it is extraordinary, isn't it? Because Angela Rayner has been fairly quiet because she still hasn't sorted out her tax bill. I don't know why it's taken so long, by the way, because she just owes a load of tax. She just needs to pay it. It's quite simple. I mean, you and I, if we had an issue with the tax department, I'm sure would be getting letter after letter after letter to say, when are you paying us? You know, so I don't know how she's managed to drag it out for so long. But yeah, she's now kind of turning on her own kind, you know, because she says that the minimum wage is too high, which is going to upset the unions that back her. She says that the business rates are too high, which is going to upset Rachel Reeves. She's going to say the alcohol tax is too high and people, you know, can't run their businesses. So, I mean, is this her officially kind of declaring herself as ready for leadership?
Well, we already know she's got £1 million fighting fund, Mike. And absolutely, what she's discovered is that Wes Streeting was out of the starting blocks pretty early on and got a head advantage on her. And now she's decided, well, enough is enough. And she rather wants the job, albeit, as you say, she still has that problem with HMRC. I got a good idea. Write a cheque for £40,000. Made payable to Her Majesty's, His Majesty's government, and do it now.
Yes.
There's no need to wait, Angela. Just give the money to HMRC, and if at the end of the day, after their investigation, they decide that you owed less or owed more, they'll let you know, I'm sure. But it would seem rather odd if Angela Rayner has fired the starting pistol herself in order for her to get out the blocks. I mean, the only person who doesn't appreciate that there is a leadership election on is the man who is leader of the Labour Party, Sir Keir Starmer. Everybody else is. It's basically a civil war. The civil servants have also been dragged into it now because a number of other people have said how unhappy they are at the sacking of Sir Chris and in the way that it was done. It was a 4-day sacking. You're quite right, Mike. He read about it in the Sunday papers. He even read who the successor was going to be. And then it took another 4 days whilst the negotiation took place. And now we realise what that negotiation was. The civil servants were only authorised to pay up to £95,000.
Right.
They weren't authorised to pay £260,000. And as I said earlier, they didn't want their fingerprints on this. If the Prime Minister was insistent on paying over £250,000 of taxpayers' money to get rid of a man that he only appointed a year ago, then he's the one that had to direct it, and that's what the civil service forced him to do. How embarrassing is that?
I know. It really is embarrassing because we've unearthed a clip from a previous kind of incarnation of Keir Starmer, who boasts about how when he was in charge of the CPS, he was in charge of something like 8,000 people. And he always gave them credit when they did something good. And he always stood by them when they did something bad. And he never allowed anybody who worked for him to take the fall because he always protected his staff. Now, he's obviously changed his tune, but have a look at this.
Hear me out. I had 8,000 staff for 5 years as the Director of Public Prosecutions. And I acted, I hope, in the right way with them, which is when they had victories, I celebrated on their behalf. I picked up awards on their behalves. And when they made mistakes, I carried the can. I never turn on my staff, and you should never turn on your staff.
You should never turn on your staff. Well, he's turned on all of them, hasn't he?
I know. I think maybe one of the reasons why he's replacing Sir Chris with 3 people is so that he can easily fire 2 of them in a few days' time, and at least he'll have one already there. No, absolutely. It's a little bit like that stupid statement he made the other day when he said that he's won every fight that he's been in, which is of course rubbish because 2 Wednesdays ago he caved in to Kemi Badenoch when she said she didn't want the Cabinet Office to deal with the Mandelson files. She wanted the Intelligence Committee to do it. He caved in within 3 hours on that one. And then the other one was Morgan McSweeney when Kemi asked him, did he have full confidence in McSweeney? He said, absolutely he did. And then 5 days later, he was on the phone saying, thanks, goodbye, Morgan. I mean, it's absolutely nonsense. I don't know why he bothers, quite frankly. But if I was a civil servant or anybody who was working now for Sir Keir, I'd be very worried. I think
Yes.
at the next PMQs, and as you know, they're on recess at the moment, so there won't be one for a week or so. But I think Kemi has got to ask Sir Keir Starmer, does he have confidence in himself?
Yes. Because if he
And
says
then
yes...
when he says yes, we know it's only a matter of days.
Exactly right. I mean, it is quite extraordinary, isn't it, the number of times that he's done that and then subsequently sacked the person that he had full confidence in. I mean, Ed Davey came quite close, didn't he, on Wednesday when he said, does he still agree with himself
Yes, right.
that some particular thing had happened. But I don't know whether you've had a chance to read it yet, but there's a fantastic piece in The Spectator by Tim Shipman, the former Sunday Times political editor, about Keir Starmer and about his failings. And it's quite an extraordinary read, actually, because let me just read you this paragraph in which he says this. Starmer promised change, but the question now is whether he can change. Fundamentally, the Prime Minister cannot make a decision. He cannot stick to a decision. He cannot implement a decision. He cannot defend that decision when it gets tough or explain that decision, ever. And that's from a senior figure inside Number 10. And that's kind of, where we are. So we've basically got a leader who can't stick to anything, who doesn't really believe in anything, who can't convince anybody of anything. What's the point of him?
Well, he's incredibly weak, and this is the problem now, because it looks as if the left of the Labour Party are now pushing him even further to the left, and that's not going to be in the best interests of the United Kingdom. Yeah, he's got more flip-flops than a Blackpool shop. Let's be fair. He has U-turned on almost every decision that he's made. He's incredibly weak. And as I say, the war to replace him, the competition to replace him, I should say, is already well underway. And you've got Wes Streeting, Angela Rayner, you've got Ed Miliband. There'll be one or two others like Al Khan's. And every speech that any of them make now will be seen as a bid for the leadership. Meanwhile, Sir Keir, I mean, he's twiddling his thumbs, working out which policy he's going to U-turn on next.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, some of the things that are going on in this country at the moment are quite extraordinary. This story about pupils being able to change their gender in primary school, it's a reversal of what Kemi Badenoch wanted to ban, basically, and it's Bridget Phillipson who says that it's possible that children as young as 4 are going to be able to decide that they don't like their gender and they want to be called something else and they want to have a different pronoun. It's madness, isn't it?
How many lives of children are going to be destroyed by this bonkers mentality that is existing? I mean, really, children should be allowed to grow up in the way that is natural and not have these false choices imposed upon them, because that's exactly what's going to happen. You heard what that lady had just texted you about some hairdresser's son choosing to be a cat. I mean, really, this is absolutely bonkers. People really should be making those sorts of decisions when they're 18 and not a day before then. I mean, really, it is absolutely nonsense to be imposing this on children.
Absolutely is, and I can't believe that parents would go along with it. I mean, obviously there are some who do. I mean, we're getting a lot of reaction on our YouTube chat today. People saying, if a 4-year-old child is going into school asking to be called a she when it's a he, surely the parents have got to bear some responsibility for that, and surely social services would be involved and say, what on earth are you doing?
Yeah, what's going to happen, Mike, when the first teacher gets sacked because he refuses to call a he, she, who happens to be 5 years of age? I know it's going to happen somewhere. As bonkers as that sounds, let's just wait for it, shall we? And where's the teachers' unions protecting the teachers against this sort of rubbish?
Right. Let's talk a little bit about the BBC as well, because the story on the front page of The Telegraph comes from a decision yesterday in Florida where Donald Trump's lawsuit against the BBC has been given permission to sort of go ahead effectively, go to trial in February 2027, which is pretty bad news for the BBC because they were trying to get it thrown out. And it might still get thrown out in the coming sort of months and before February 2027. But it basically means, as far as I understand it, the BBC are going to have to provide some evidence and some discovery, if you like, to Donald Trump's lawyers, which is inevitably going to show them to have been biased. It's going to show them to have been deliberately misleading and to have shown them to be very anti-Trump. And I think, and I said this to Kelvin Mackenzie earlier, I think it's going to result in the BBC having to settle the case.
Yeah, that could easily happen. We already know that they're making £600 million worth of cuts within the BBC. I suspect that that's not going to quite reach some of the fat salaries that are being paid at the very top of the BBC, including the Director General. But absolutely, we do know that there is evidence where a speech by, or two speeches by Donald Trump were stitched together to make him sound as if he was saying something completely opposite to what he was saying. The BBC sort of half apologized whilst trying still to justify it. Absolutely rubbish. And now they've got themselves involved in what will be a multi-million-pound lawsuit in just defending it, even if they, at the end of the day, it's not found in Donald Trump's favor. It's still going to cost a considerable sum of money, which of course is all coming out of programming. And at the same time, Mike, just a few weeks ago, it was announced that the license fee is going up again. This is absolutely a model that just simply doesn't work in 2026. It might have been okay for the 1950s when there were two channels, but it just simply doesn't work now when people can choose what they want to watch, as your viewers are doing. And the viewing percentages for the BBC is going down year by year. I mean, it does beg the question, what is the BBC for? And I think the one of those programs was called Pointless. And that's exactly what the BBC is all about these days.
Yeah, absolutely right. I see that, by the way, the weather in Greece is rather nice. You managed to escape the rain here. We know we've had rain for every single day of the year so far, and I'm, for one, I'm getting pretty fed up with it. So how have you managed to get that blue sky behind you, for heaven's sake?
Well, we've had some rain here too, Mike, early this morning. But fortunately, it has stopped. The weather in Greece is normally incredibly good, but in other parts of Europe, in Spain, in Portugal, they've had some appalling weather. But no, and in Scandinavia, clearly the snow has come thick and fast. But of course, in the United Kingdom, it's rain that's there. I was talking to somebody because Prince Charles came to visit Clitheroe the other day, and the person I was speaking to said, oh, he had a good reception the other day somewhere else, except it rained. I said, well, I can guarantee you one thing. When he goes to Clitheroe, he's going to have some rain.
Absolutely right. We're getting closer and closer to the by-election up in Manchester, and we've got a clip here which kind of illustrates the dreadful state of the UK's political landscape, I think. These are a couple of Green candidates, right? Have a look at this.
Hi, my name's Nilton.
And I'm Joel.
And we are your Westbourne Green Party candidates for the May elections. Ada, Joel and I have been out on the Brunel estate speaking to residents. A number of weeks ago, we raised with the council the breakdown of the Sunderland House lift.
Following our pressure on the council, the Sunderland lifts are now fully functional.
This also follows our work on the Brindley and Warwick estate at Polesworth House, where we raised concerns about repeated lift breakdowns. We managed to get the lift back in operation at Polesworth House as well.
And we'll continue to hold the council to account on these issues. And if you do have any concerns, please do get in touch. We are here to listen and take action more than anything.
Yes, absolutely. Joel is right. We are about action. And on May 7th, elections will take place. It's an election between Labour and the Green Party. Your choice is same old Labour or three hard-working Greens with Joel, Ada and Nilton, who will continue to hold the Labour Council to account on issues that arise. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not really sure what to make of that, to be honest. I don't know whether that's a rather bad-looking boy band or a bad-looking girl band. I don't know what sort of band it would be, but, you know, they're fixing the lifts, you know. I mean, yeah, it's a bit like stopping the boats, isn't it? We're fixing the lifts. It's like the worst slogan ever.
Well, at least she had green glasses as well, so she's designer suited.
Are you sure you're not assuming her gender there? I mean, I don't know if it's a she or a he, to be honest.
No, well, green glasses were there, but the reality is at least they're having elections because elections are being stopped by this government for 4.5 million people, and I think it's an absolute disgrace. I used to be chair of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association in the House of Commons, Mike, and part of my responsibilities was to go around some countries and talk about the importance of democracy. And now, of course, my feet have been cut underneath me because if any of these countries now want to stop elections, they now have a blueprint that has been provided to them by Sir Keir Starmer, who says, well, actually, we were reforming local authorities, and that's why we're not bothering to have local elections. I mean, it is really dangerous what they are doing. And in some cases, these elections are being cancelled for 2 years. I mean, it's an absolute nonsense. It's a danger for democracy. If people wanted to vote for those 3 people that we've just seen, they should have the right to do so.
Yes, no, I couldn't agree with you more. And we can make fun of them as much as we like, but at least they're putting themselves out there and actually, you know, asking people to put their faith in them. But I mean, you do wonder, and I do anyway, if Keir Starmer, in his final kind of death throes, would try and cancel the general election as well.
Well, I can predict one thing absolutely safely, Mike, that whenever that election comes, he will not be the leader of the Labour Party leading that party into it. Can't tell you who it is going to be, but it's not going to be him. He's going to be toast well before then. No, absolutely. Cancelling local elections, no, you're quite right. That is a segue into, at some stage in the future, any government of any colour saying, well, actually, there's real problems here. I mean, don't forget, there is constitutional reform that started in the House of Commons yesterday in allowing under 18-year-olds to vote at general elections in the United Kingdom for the first time. I think that is a dangerous precedent, allowing children to vote, because if Starmer thinks by allowing under 18s to vote that they're more likely to vote Labour, and I think that's where his guess is. This has got nothing to do with empowering under 18-year-olds. This is how you're going to get more votes for the Labour Party. Then he's going to be sadly mistaken, because from what I can count, there's a lot of youngsters who the last thing that they want to do is to vote Labour. A lot of them are going to vote Green, Reform. Even the Conservatives are going to gain a lot of young votes, as I've seen Kemi has been going around the country talking to young people. It's a big mistake. It really is. Him empowering the under 18-year-olds with votes and then denying 4.5 million people the opportunity to vote in the first place. And it's not just the by-election, Mike. We've got the Welsh Senate elections and the Scottish parliamentary elections all taking place in May. And we've already had Lisa Nandy, I think it's Lisa Nandy, as one of the cabinet ministers, who's indicated how serious it would be if the Labour Party actually doesn't do well in these in the by-election. There is a chance the Labour Party could go from being first to third. And does Keir Starmer really think that he's going to survive that? One of the reasons people think, Mike, that that the contenders for the leadership are not really pushing it too hard at this moment is that they want to get the by-election out of the way. They want to even get the local elections out of the way so they don't have to take the blame for it.
Yeah, it is absolutely extraordinary stuff. Nigel, listen, have a lovely weekend, and we'll see you soon. Looks like Athens is the best place to be right now. I wish I was able to join you, but sadly I'll be traipsing through the muddy fields of Sussex with my dog, with an anorak on, probably cursing the weather. But great to see you. Thanks very much indeed. Nigel Evans, the former Deputy Speaker of the House of Commons, of course, a long-time MP for Ribble Valley, a great guy. And as I say, he's on Plank of the Week tonight from 7 o'clock. You don't want to miss that. Right here on the Mike Graham Show. It's 13 minutes past 8. It is also Friday the 13th, by the way. Coming up, we'll give you an update on the poll. The question to which is this: which of these sentences would turn you off your Valentine? Let's do a few super chats as well, because we've got quite a lot of those coming in. Let's check it out, and we're going to do Heron of the Day as well. We've got later on, we've got Jacob Rees-Mogg coming into the studio. We've got Rafe Heidel-Mancu as well. This one from Cindy Smith, best presenter in the world and the funniest. I think we've done that one already haven't we? I mean, I know it's good, but, it's not that good. Also, we'll be bringing you more news from the front pages and inside the papers as well. Andy Gill flown to the UK on Epstein's Lolita Express, is what it says on the front page of the Sun. And the Telegraph has just put an exclusive story on their page one, which says this. Prince, formerly known as Andrew, leaked confidential Treasury briefing to a banker friend. And here's the actual email that he sent. I pass this on to you for comment and a suggestion or solution. The essence is the demander is getting signals that we should allow the democratic process to happen before you make your move. Interested in your opinion. And the story is this. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor forwarded a confidential Treasury briefing to a banker friend while he was trade envoy. The former prince asked Amanda Thirsk, his deputy private secretary, with obtaining an internal government memo in February 2010 about the Icelandic financial crisis. In correspondence seen by the Telegraph, Ms. Thirsk emailed Michael Elam, the Treasury's Director General of International Finance at the time, asking him to produce a briefing note for Mr. Mountbatten Windsor on the Nordic nation. This story just gets further and further into the mire of more and more people being involved. It really is quite an extraordinary thing. I think I've got an update, have I, on the poll? Have you got an update on the poll? Yes, I have. Which of these sentences would turn you off your Valentine? 1, have you ever been to Sandringham? Speaking of Andrew. 2, come back to my island. 3, look at my didgeridoo. Or 4, how was about that then? And it turns out that at the moment, the lead is very, very slight. It's only 1%. 27% of you would be turned off by have you ever been to Sandringham? I don't blame you for that. 26% for come back to my island, 20% for look at my didgeridoo, and 26% as well for how's about that then? Now, shall we have some news with Edward Hughes?
Good morning, all. Here's the news with me, Edward Hughes. Friday the 13th in the United Kingdom, February 13th, 2026. What a delightfully ominous way to kick off the weekend. Because if the calendar wasn't already mocking us, the headlines certainly are. Let's dive in, shall we? First up, Sir Keir Starmer clings on like superglue in Downing Street. After dodging what passed for a coup, mostly hot air and a quick U-turn from Scottish Labour's Anna Sarwar, he's now solemnly vowing he's not prepared to walk away from my mandate. How inspiring. Nothing says unbreakable resolve like insisting you're still here while the party eyes the exits. Next up, the Gorton and Denton by-election on the 26th, where Labour could finish a respectable third if things keep going this way. Leadership at its finest. Meanwhile, the Church of England has finally euthanized its endless living in love and faith project. Years of heated debate ending in allowing blessing prayers for same-sex couples, but only bolted onto existing services like an embarrassed afterthought. No standalone blessings, no gay married clergy, just a weary, we're done, and a pivot to funding interfaith chats. Because when everyone's still furious, the solution is obviously more polite ecumenical tea parties. Progress. Over in immigration land, the Home Office beams about stopping 40,000 small boat attempts since the election, with returns nearing 60,000.
Shut up, Edward. That's far too long. I've told you before, we don't want news to be that long. I don't understand why he keeps raving on and on and on. So we're going to try and get a shorter version of Edward Hughes with the news there. I think you'll find that would be exactly what you want. Coming up, I'm going to give you my meltdown of the day. But first, it's Heron of the day and a bit of a different... So, normally speaking, this is when we show a picture of a heron that somebody's put in to our system for us. But today, we've got something slightly different. Because we've got this massive giant bird which has arrived on our shores, right? And so the heron of the day is actually a proper heron. Look at that. What do you think of that? Rubbish. The sender is Stuart Watson. Thank you very much indeed, Stuart. That says 23. Is that his age? Stuart Watson, 23. Or is that the house number? I think he's given us his postcode as well, which I'm not going to read out. Oh, sorry, I'm not going to cover it either. This is lovely. Stuart, thank you very much indeed. You know what? I've got this idea that we're going to have a sort of an entire menagerie of herons. And as you can see, it is a heron because it's got an S-shaped neck, unlike the crane, which is over there. Because, of course, that's a crane. This is not a heron. This is great, isn't it? What happens if I put it there? Does it stand there? It does. But you can't actually... Yeah, there you go. So my co-host is a heron. today. Absolutely brilliant. Now, shall we? I'll move him slightly over there. I'm sure Jacob Rees-Mogg will be very impressed with our wildlife collection. Thank you very much indeed. It's very kind of you. I mean, I sort of hesitate to say this because if I say, if you want to send us a heron in, please do, because I'm worried that we'd probably end up with about 600 of them sitting there. But anyway, listen, we for those of you who've just joined us and have only just started watching the show, because I know loads and loads of you are now joining in great big numbers, and please do like the channel. Let's try and get it up to 5,000 again. It's 2.8 thousand at the moment. Let's try and get it up to 5,000 for a Friday the 13th. I think that's the least we can do. Yeah, but you know, the whole idea of the heron is, and I haven't seen it since, right? But when we sort of embarked on this venture to do a new show on a new channel and to be completely independent of sort of what would be otherwise known as mainstream media, I walked out of my house one morning, which is down in sort of southeast London near the river, and basically I saw this huge bird sitting on a railing, just staring into the abyss, you know, and it turned out it was a heron. And I thought, that's unusual. I've never seen a heron sitting there before. I mean, I've seen them in various different parts of the world. I've seen them in different countries. I've seen them more down in Sussex, where, you know, I used to have a pond and that used to have newts in it. I think a heron came and just ate them all. Had some goldfish in it as well, ate all those. Oh, here's one from Simon who says the collective noun for herons is a siege. So we have now got a siege of herons because we've got quite a few. The thing is, right, I then started to do a bit of research on herons, and we discovered that a heron in many cultures, and including our own, is a harbinger of good things, and it's a sort of a signal that new beginnings are happening. And I was quite taken by this because at the end of the day, I was involved in a new beginning. I was embarking on a new business with Pooch and with Charlotte and with Donald, and we thought, you know, this is really quite an interesting phenomenon. And then I saw the heron again. Came back, I mean, twice in about a 2-week period. I haven't seen him since. And since then, lots of people have reported seeing herons, and lots of people have involved themselves in the kind of folklore about herons. And I think it was really, really quite interesting. So that's how we came about the sort of heron obsession, if you like. And somebody's saying, are we sure the new heron is not called Andrew? He's headed straight to mate with the crane. Yeah, well, you know, it is Valentine's Day, I suppose, or it will be. Can you put your address up again, please, says Alison. Yes, we can. It's Suite 19.6, Exhibition House, Addison Bridge Place, London W14 8XP. And that is here. That's Exhibition House, Addison Bridge Place, London W14 8XP. We will be next week actually announcing something as well for you, which will be that we're going to have bumper stickers available to you. We haven't quite worked out how we're going to distribute them yet. So if you've got any ideas, by all means let us know. But we're thinking we might just get people to send us a self-stamped address envelope and ask for one, because we don't want to charge any money for them, but obviously we don't want to be spending bucket loads of money sending them out either. So anyway, that's the plan for next week, so we'll bring you all of that. But let us now, I think, because the time is right, before we talk to Ellie Hodges and before we talk to Rafe Heidelmann-Q and before Jacob Rees-Mogg comes in at 9 o'clock, if you've got any questions for him, by the way, by all means put them on the chat and we'll see if we can ask him those questions. But let's do Mike's Meltdown. It's very quiet, Mike's Meltdown. Should we get a little sting for it or something?
I will sort that out.
Will you? Thank you. That's the voice of Charlotte you can hear in the background, who came down yesterday to help us out and to kind of figure out what it's like in the heat of the moment right here when we're doing live broadcasting. And it's been a pleasure to be working with her for the last couple of days. So anyway, let's talk about what has got my goat this morning. And it's this story about the Prime Minister sacking this top civil servant, Sir Chris Walmard, who's the Cabinet Secretary, right? Apparently he says he sacked him because there were no... according to the civil service, I should say, there were no clear and compelling reasons why he should be removed. Keir Starmer is basically blaming him for all of the vetting errors when it comes to Peter Mandelson, when it comes to Lord Doyle, when it comes to paedophile friends, right? Because he's basically saying this civil servant should have done a better job. He's the Cabinet Secretary, so he's like the head of the civil service. He's a top civil servant. Starmer's basically arguing that he should have been better at coming up with vetting procedures that were going to find out exactly what Peter Mandelson was up to and exactly what Lord Doyle was up to. You remember that Lord Doyle was the one who went campaigning for a friend of his who had been expelled from the Labour Party because he was charged with possession of pictures of child porn and paedophilia, basically. And Starmer's argument is that he didn't know enough about what these people were doing because they lied to him. We've said in the past, clearly, the problem with Starmer is that he is not very, very clever at working out what people are really doing. And if he is, in fact, that gullible, he shouldn't be in charge in any event. And as I've said before, Tim Shipman's written a piece today in which he regards Starmer as a man who really shouldn't be in charge of anything. Because according to him, he says Starmer promised change, but the question now is whether he can actually change. Fundamentally, and this is from somebody inside Number 10, fundamentally, the Prime Minister cannot make a decision, he cannot stick to a decision, he cannot implement a decision, he cannot defend a decision when it gets tough, or explain that decision, ever. And if that's how bad he is, how on earth is he the Prime Minister of this country, right? But here's the bit that really, really rankles with me. Because Keir Starmer clearly knows that it's not really fair to sack this guy, Sir Chris Walmard, the Cabinet Secretary, he's decided that the best thing to do, and the best way to handle it, is to basically give him a massive payoff so he doesn't complain about it. So he's given up £260,000 of our money, that's taxpayers' money, to this guy to walk away. He's only been appointed a year ago, so this is literally a massive, massive payoff for having worked for a year and for getting sacked for no reason because Keir Starmer's decided to throw him under the bus. Shall we have a look at what Keir Starmer says he does when it comes to his employees and the people that work for him? He said some years ago that he never blames them when things go wrong. Have a look.
Hear me out. I had 8,000 staff for 5 years as the Director of Public Prosecutions. And I acted, I hope, in the right way with them, which is when they had victories, I celebrated on their behalf. I picked up awards on their behalves. And when they made mistakes, I carried the can. I never turn on my staff, and you should never turn on your staff.
You should never turn on your staff, says Keir Starmer. And if you do turn on them, just make sure you give them a nice big payoff so they'll walk away happy and they won't complain and they might not sue you. Well, that's all very well, but it's not his money, is it? 260,000 quid. It's our money, your tax money. So my taxes that I paid rather a lot of in December and January, because I'm self-employed and that's what I have to do, has gone to pay a civil servant who should never have been fired in the first place. And I wouldn't mind if there was a reason for it. I wouldn't mind if there was some logic to it, but there isn't any logic to it. And my anger was kind of stoked even further when I opened my post bag yesterday, not really the one in the office, but the one at my house, to find 2 penalty charge notices, one from Transport for London and one from the Royal Borough of Greenwich, right? Both of them, supposedly, as they used to call it in America, moving violations, right? Penalty charge notice number. Liability for the penalty charge lies with you, the owner of the car, right? And apparently, notice is hereby served to the owner of a vehicle registration mark, blah, 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 blah. And it happened in the dark at 4:33. The circumstances are performing a prohibited right turn, where it said no right turn. Now, the reason that I took the right turn was because I know that it's normally a no right turn traffic light. However, there was a sign which said that a right turn was allowed because the road opposite was closed, right? So I made the right turn, assuming that the yellow sign, which was in front of me, was actually going to mean that I was allowed to make the right turn. But instead, I've now got a penalty charge notice, which I think is for £160, right? And look at all the paperwork you have to look through, right? £160 unless you pay it within 2 weeks, in which case it's £80. Now, if I decide to appeal this, which I think I will, because I really do think that it's been given to me in error, right? If I decide to appeal it, I have to fill out a form. And it says this, grounds for representations. I was not the owner of the vehicle at the time or never was. Well, that's not going to apply, is it? There was no contravention of a prescribed order or failing to comply with an indication given by a sign. So maybe I can use that. The vehicle was being used without your consent. No. We are a hire firm. No. The penalty charge exceeded the amount applicable. Not really. So if I say to them, I know what's going to happen, right? You have to write out the details of your representation. If I do that, you know what they're going to say. They're going to say, well, have you got a photograph of the sign in question that you say was there, which said you could turn right? And no, of course I haven't got a bloody picture of it, because if I did take a picture of it, there'd be another camera taking a picture of me, taking a picture of that, and finding me for taking a picture of it. Because you're not allowed to use your phone in the car. So of course I don't go around taking pictures of bleeding signs on the road, do I? Okay, now the next one is from the Royal Borough of Greenwich. Let's see what this one's for, right? The Royal Borough of Greenwich believes that a penalty charge is payable with respect to the below vehicle on the grounds of the following alleged contravention. Now, this is another one of those road closure things where it says, failing to comply with a prohibition on certain types of vehicle, brackets motor vehicles. So this will be another one of those roads that you're not allowed to go up, right? The alleged parking event was detected and recorded by automatic number plate recognition cameras at the site. I mean, it's just ridiculous. So I've basically got 2 fines here for the equivalent of 320 quid for doing things which I didn't believe to be wrong, right? I mean, for heaven's sake, life is hard enough without getting fines for £360 for things that I don't think I did wrong. See what I'm saying? It's bloody irritating. I'm sick to death of it. And they just milk us and milk us and milk us until there's no milk left. Until we're literally bled dry. I know that's a bit of a mixed metaphor. But, you know, let's just pay this civil servant 260,000 quid and let's just fine me 320 quid to help pay for it. That's what's going on. It's absolutely and utterly ridiculous and disgusting. That's my meltdown for the day. Well, I feel a bit better at least for that, but I still owe them the bloody money, so I don't know. Eddie Hodges is here. Rafe Heidelman-Koo is going to be along a bit later on. We'll get from him the latest on this book that I got the other day, which I showed you, Immigration. There we are, The Betrayal of Britain. Also, there's another book that I'm going to be talking about next week that I went to a book launch for last night, which involves people talking about money laundering and how massive a problem it is in the world. Because you know what they've done? They've basically said, we're going to clamp down on money laundering, but of course it means that the only people that can now continue to launder money are the money launderers. But what you can't do is get a mortgage because they'll say, well, where's that money coming from? We've got to pass the smell test on money laundering. Unbelievable, right? Anyway, let's go to Edward. Do we do Edward Hughes with the news?
Plank promo.
Oh, Plank promo. OK, Plank tonight. Plank of the week, 7 o'clock. Have a look. No, I love this. No, because at least in America, when it's cold like that and there's precipitation, as they call it, the sky's blue.
Yeah.
You know, and you have this beautiful kind of sunshine and snow, and you know, I don't mind that at all. And also, they know how to deal with it.
Well,
My sister lives in Connecticut, and you know, the gritters are out. You know, even before the snow started falling, and she has a house on kind of a little road in this little town, and the guys come around and plough her drive so that she can drive out whenever she wants.
Here, you just need 2 centimetres.
You get 2 centimetres, and all the airports shut down. Trains don't go anywhere.
Schools closed. The whole
London gets shut. I remember they shut the tube once when it snowed, and I said to the guy, "It's literally underground. Why are you shutting it?" And he's like, "Well, some of it isn't." And it's like, well, can't you just run the bit that is?
They closed the airports once in Heathrow and Gatwick because there was a threat of snow.
Oh, for goodness sake.
It wasn't even snowing.
Well, we now live in that ridiculous kind of world where, if there's any health and safety issue which might, result in somebody slipping, they have to shut everything down.
It's a shame we don't have a minister in the government that is taking climate change serious. Oh, hold on. Ed Miliband.
Ed Miliband, He's not on the list this week.
Amazing. He should be.
You're safe, Ed. You're safe.
I was waiting for someone to mention climate change. That's as big a bogus thing
Yes,
as
massive
COVID
scam.
thing. The
Yeah.
whole thing is a scam.
Total
And do
scam.
you actually believe in climate change? And that's the problem. That is the problem with the Tories.
Well, I tell you what,
is
it
you
used to be-
believe the same thing that the
No,
other
I'll tell you
guys
what it
believe
was, right? It
in.
used to be called global warming.
Yes.
And then people like me used to say,
Yeah.
I guess if the price of us having a nice weather in Britain is we're
Yeah.
going to lose Venice, it's a price I'm prepared to pay.
Plank of the week tonight, 7 o'clock. Jasmine Birtles, Lewis Schaefer, and of course Nigel Evans, who we just saw reporting into us from Athens, which looks a hell of a lot nicer than it is here. I'm joined by Ellie Hodges now. Ellie, very good morning to you. Should I introduce you now as the New Culture Forum's roving reporter? Because I heard the other night that's your new.
You can
That's your
introduce me
new
as
kind of
anything you'd
title,
like.
isn't it?
Yeah, I'm their new reporter, so I'm going to
And
be
we've got their
going-
book there because Rafe
Yes.
Mancu's coming in. We're going to talk to him about that, which is very cool. But you've also been picking up on some educational kind of stories. And I mean, this morning we've got this ludicrous story on the front page of the Times and the Mail talking about how pupils as young as 4 years old might be able to change their gender, might be able to kind of, decide that they don't want to be called he or she, and they might want to have a new name. I mean, it's just kind of mad. But you've uncovered another story, which you put out on social media yesterday, about some controversial classroom wording on terrorism. Tell us about that.
So this has come from a Year 9 student. So not a Year 9 student, actually. The parent of a Year 9 student emailed me and said, this is what my kid's being taught. I've looked it up and this is what I found. And this is what they said to me as well. And they sent me the links to it. And I thought, oh my God, this is mental. And I looked at all of the screenshots, and there's a website called TESS, which is the main website used for teachers to get resources from, so kind of slideshows for lessons. And this is what's being taught. So it's a lesson on terrorism. I think it's to do with a history lesson, and the wording of it is slightly interesting, I'd say. So the title of one of the slides are Al-Qaeda more terrorists or freedom fighters?
Hey.
And they give you sentences.
Well, that's easy, isn't it? They're terrorists.
I know, and they give you sentence starters. So Al-Qaeda can be seen as both terrorists to some and freedom fighters to others. In one way, Al-Qaeda are terrorists because in another way, they are freedom fighters. And this is being taught from the ages 11 to 14.
Right.
So this is right at the start of secondary school when you're very young, and you're basically leaving it up to 11-year-olds to decide what a terrorist is, which is absolutely insane.
And presumably you could argue, if you were a parent, could you not, that this kind of could, in some instances, radicalise people into thinking, well, I quite like what Al-Qaeda are against, and so I'm going to go and join Al-Qaeda.
It's legitimising the argument that they can be seen as freedom fighters. So this is the bit I found most interesting is one of the slides said that whether or not you see someone as a terrorist depends on what side you're on. It really is all opinion. And I thought, how are you telling 11-year-olds that it's an opinion if you think they're a terrorist or not? Because it's not. And teaching kids this young, and I understand some people, when I first posted this, said, but it's about debate and it's encouraging kids to think outside the box. And I thought, I think this is a bit too much of a sensitive issue. And it's leaving it up to, as I said, 11 to 14-year-olds to decide what a terrorist is.
Well, this is the problem because, we live now in an age where everything appears to have become a matter of opinion and there aren't any facts anymore because, what you hear so often from many young people is, well, these are my facts, this is my truth, this is my, belief. And they say it as though they sort of own the facts, but you can't own the facts. There are certain things which are true, like you can't pretend that gravity doesn't exist. You can't pretend that, if you drive a car into a wall, you won't smash the front of the car up. These are things that happen. These are facts.
Or if you park in the wrong places, you get a
Thank you very much indeed. Yeah, that's a bit harsh. I'm already in pain over this. I got home yesterday and I got all of these parking charges. Anyway, never mind. But interesting enough, Stephen Barrett, the barrister, who is a good friend of ours and he comes on our show quite a lot, he put a little tweet out underneath yours in which he said, the thing about Al-Qaeda is they are a prescribed terrorist organisation. So this is actually potentially criminal, what's being done here.
That's
because
the thing.
You can't encourage people to think that a prescribed terrorist organisation is in fact a legitimate freedom-fighting organisation.
Yeah.
That's
the thing as well, is some of the questions on this, challenging tasks, it says, for the students is, why is it so difficult to define what a terrorist is?
Right.
When are terrorists not terrorists? When do you believe that terrorism is terrorism? what is the difference between a terrorist and a freedom fighter? It's very kind of big questions for 11 to 14-year-olds to kind of tackle with.
And also in the background that we're now dealing with, where you see these pro-Palestinian marches going on all the time, when you see the Iranian marches going on too, and you see people who are generally speaking in support of free Palestine, and also it turns out in support of Hamas. They're also in support of a murderous, ghastly, horrible regime in Iran, because they think it's all legitimate. And it isn't.
No, exactly. And I think that it's just way too young to be teaching this kind of topics. And whilst they did, say the facts about how many people died and the effects it left, they still then went on to say, are they freedom fighters or terrorists? And I just don't think it's appropriate.
No.
I think it's a very heavy topic to have to deal with, and it's so sensitive.
Right.
And you have to go about teaching it in a certain way, and I don't think this is the right way at all.
And is it your understanding that this is part of the curriculum that Bridget Phillipson has kind of set out as the Education Secretary, or is it something that they've kind of... at one particular sort of education.
So teachers actually have quite a lot of free will in terms of what they teach in many ways. So obviously a lot of it does come from the curriculum, and there will probably be something on the curriculum that says you do need to talk about terrorism, explain what terrorism is.
Right.
Yet teachers are it's largely up to them to decide how they teach it. And as I said, this website test, which is, I think it is actually the most widely used website to get teaching resources from here, and definitely worldwide as well. So teachers are getting it off there and then posting it and using it in their classrooms. And I think when you actually went onto the website, and if you searched up terrorism in the teaching resources website, the first thing that came up was this. So this is the one that's being used the most often, definitely.
Yeah, it's definitely strange, isn't it, that they should be doing it also without kind of any parental input, perhaps, or without asking the parents. I mean, I've always worried.
To this as well.
Yeah.
I remember, I can't remember, I was speaking to a teacher at one point, and they said to me that if a kid that comes out to them and says, I want to be called this, so they're basically saying, I want to identify as, whatever gender it is, they don't have a legal responsibility to tell the parent. So you could have
even if they're only 4?
Yeah, so you could have your child going to school and identifying as the other gender, and the parents not even knowing about it, which is ridiculous.
That is insane, isn't it? I've got this from Shazza, it's a super chat. There are loads of cat, dog, hamster kids in Kent classrooms. They've got water, they've got food bowls, they've got beds to sleep in. Woke insanity. I mean, I don't understand. That's really quite a shocking thing that you've just said, though, that the parents can be unaware of the fact that their kids are doing that.
The teachers don't have to tell them, and it's because the child has their privacy rights. But I think in that instance, the parents definitely need to be alerted that their child is identifying in another way. Because why are they deciding they want to identify like that? Is it because what the school are telling them? Is it because the school are pushing them in a certain way? Like when I was younger, I was probably a bit of a tomboy at some points. That didn't mean I wanted to be a boy.
No, right.
That's just I liked playing football, or I liked doing this, I liked doing that. That doesn't mean that I wanted to be a boy.
No.
And I think that it's getting so confusing now because teachers are pushing, oh, you can be another gender, blah, blah, blah. And they're bringing up these ideas way too young. And I think that if people just, wasn't told about it all the time, a lot of people wouldn't do it.
No, I think that's right. Because at the end of the day, children are very impressionable.
Yeah.
Because they're children. I mean, that's just the fact of life. They tend to be influenced by their peers. This is why it says here in the Bridget Phillipson sort of rule book, they're saying, this will only happen in very rare cases. But if you're in a classroom and one child decides to identify as a hamster, then it's almost guaranteed that there'll be another couple of people who go, I quite fancy a bit of that. So I'll be a hamster as well. We can all go into a cage together and just lie there, playing around in the sawdust, It's insane, isn't it?
And people say to this, when you start talking about this, you're transphobic. No, it's not that at all. It's just caring about children.
It's all about hamsters.
And also, I don't know, what would the word be for that?
What? Hamsterphobic? Hamsterphobic, I guess, yeah. I mean, bring your own wood shavings or whatever it is and, line the corner. It's very odd.
It's just not even about, being transphobic or anything, because I'm not. If someone says they want to be called, she or he or whatever, I'll do it because I can't be bothered to actually go out of my way and say, no, you're not, blah, blah, blah. I'll just respect that person's decision. That's fine. But when it comes to children, I think that's a whole different matter completely.
It really is. And when you're a parent, which I am, and I've had 4 children go through the school system in different parts of Britain and in America as well, you know, you're giving your child to a school for a fairly long period of time in any given sort of week or month or whatever, and so it's sort of in loco parentis. They're charged with looking after your child. So what they shouldn't be doing is encouraging them to be something other than they are. Right? They should be discouraging them from that, really,
No,
in my
definitely.
view.
I think education is losing its purpose now because they're trying to do too many things. And I don't want to be like dissing teachers all the time, because I think sometimes they do have the right intentions, but the way in which they do it is completely wrong. So it's like when they do all these anti-racism things, sometimes they actually have the opposite effect and they make people more separate instead of joining people together.
Sure. Well, look at what's happened, and I'm sure we'll talk to Rafe about this in a moment, with this statement from Jim Radcliffe yesterday.
Yes.
And the ridiculous kind of furore around it, as if, he wasn't entitled to have a view. And that, for example, is something that you could argue is a fact. It's not just an opinion.
That was so interesting, because he said that comment and immediately you had Keir Starmer, Ed Davey saying, apologise now. Not saying, I don't really agree with that, but they have the right to say it.
Right.
And it was just like the outrage, I thought, was just ridiculous. It's mental.
I know. Well, I was watching, for my sins, a bit of Question Time last night, and I couldn't quite believe my ears, because almost everybody on the panel thought it was the most disgusting thing they'd ever heard. And most of the audience, in fact, I don't think there was anybody in the audience who was in support of it, because they're all, they always say, oh, it's an audience picked from the, the representation of the electorate. No, it bloody well isn't. We know it's not, because they've always got all these lefties on there. And they were like, this is not the Britain that we live in, and, you need to just go to certain parts of Britain. And they were in Bristol, the People's Republic of Bristol, where literally the Green Party are going around, knocking on people's doors and asking them to boycott Israeli products and trying to find out, whether or not...
Yeah, there's something really dodgy about that, isn't there, as well? Because they were kind of like writing down, people's names that were like not interested in it at all.
Yeah, that was in Brighton, wasn't it?
Which I thought was a bit... Okay, wow, so you're actually keeping track of the people who don't agree with you.
Yes, and putting them in some kind of register.
Exactly, yeah.
It's really, really worrying about that. Here's a bit of information you bet you didn't know. I don't know how you pronounce this. Is it cricketophobia? Cricketophobia. Or cricetophobia is the specific irrational fear of hamsters. I think Richard Gere suffered from that. One for the teenagers. Sorry about that. We won't explain that. We'll just leave it hanging, as it were. Just leave it hanging. Anyway, listen, Ellie, thank you so much. By the way, have you seen this? Lord Petrolhead has sent us a super chat for 50 quid. Which will help go towards one of my many parking and moving violation fines. I've never seen more pictures of my car, actually. It's not quite nice to see. But the thing is, the pictures are all in the dark. So, of course, I can't see what I'm doing. You can't see the signs. Failing to comply with a prohibition on certain types of vehicle, motor vehicle in ground. I've no idea what that even is. I don't even know. I think, what I think it is? I think it's one of those bleeding low traffic neighbourhood things. Which, again, I'm pretty sure it didn't apply, because it was only supposed to apply between 7 and 10, and I went up it at a different time. It's like you have to have, a professor of mathematics with you driving around so you can work out whether you can actually go down the road. Unbelievable. Don't bother getting a car in London, is all I would say. Ellie Hodges, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much.
Where can people find your stuff? Tell us.
Twitter, I think it's Ellie Hodges 62.
Okay.
Instagram, Ellie Hodges. YouTube, Ellie Hodges. Just search up Ellie Hodges and I'll come up.
And you'll come up. Brilliant stuff. A latest update on the poll, by the way. Valentine's Day tomorrow. Have you got a Valentine's Day card ready for anybody?
Nope, I haven't.
No, good for you. I think it's a rip-off. Which of these sentences would turn you off your Valentine? 1, have you ever been to Sandringham? 2, come back to my island. 3, look at my didgeridoo. Or 4, how's about that then? Apparently, 28% currently, have you ever been to Sandringham? Which, of course, is where Andrew is hanging out. We'll do a bit more on that as we go. We're here, of course, until 9:30. And then we're going to film Plonk of the Week, which will go out on Saturday evening at 7. I don't know if we've done it, Pooch. Have we put out the wine that we're going to be tasting? I think we might be able to show you that, so that if you get a chance to go out and buy this. Oh, there we go. This is a kind of Prosecco, semi-secco. It's very cheap, £6.75.
Oh, wow.
Which is not bad for some bubbly fizz. So Chris Walker will be coming in with his son Oliver to open up some of that for us. So if you want to get your hands on it, see, I'm not sure where you can get it from, but you can watch and drink along with us on Saturday night. What should we do now then? News, okay. With Edward Hughes. Keep it short, mate.
Good morning, all. Here's the news with me, Edward Hughes. Friday the 13th in the United Kingdom, February 13th, 2026. What a delightfully ominous way to kick off the weekend. Because if the calendar wasn't already mocking us, the headlines certainly are. Let's dive in, shall we? First up, Sir Keir Starmer clings on like superglue in Downing Street. After dodging what passed for a coup, mostly hot air and a quick U-turn from Scottish Labour's Anna Sarwar, he's now solemnly vowing he's not prepared to walk away from my mandate. How inspiring. Nothing says unbreakable resolve like insisting you're still here while the party eyes the exits. Next up, the Gorton and Denton by-election on the 26th, where Labour could finish a respectable third if things keep going this way. Leadership at its finest. Meanwhile, the Church of England has finally euthanized its endless living in love and faith project. Years of heated debate ending in allowing blessing prayers for same-sex couples, but only bolted onto existing services like an embarrassed afterthought. No standalone blessings, no gay married clergy, just a weary, we're done, and a pivot to funding interfaith chats. Because when everyone's still furious, the solution is obviously more polite ecumenical tea parties. Progress. Over in immigration land, the Home Office beams about stopping 40,000 small boat attempts since the election, with returns nearing 60,000. Bravo. Except the boats haven't exactly retired.
Yeah, I told you to cut it short the last time and didn't do it, so we may have to have a disciplinary meeting after the show. Edward Hughes with the news there, a bit long. Lots of news around, of course. Front page of The Guardian has got the Prime Minister ousts top civil servant in shake-up of number 10 team, and he's not only given him the heave-ho for no particular reason, but civil servants actually said, we don't think this is justifiable, there's no real reason to sack him, so therefore you can't give him more than £95,000 of a payoff. Starmer overruled them and has given him £260,000 of a payoff, which is your money and my money, and Rafe Heidelman-Ku's money. Rafe, very good morning to you.
Morning.
Nice to see you. Extraordinary story, that, which we might get to a little bit later. They've also got on the front page the other story, which is still absolutely, setting the airwaves alight. And that is, of course, the Jim Ratcliffe statement the other day that we are being colonised by immigrants and we're paying way too much money to them and way too much money to people on benefits. All of which, it seems to me, is a perfectly reasonable thing to say. But we've now got the Football Association saying they're going to get involved. Manchester United, who he is co-owner of as a football club, saying they're very unhappy with what he said. I can't quite believe the reaction to something which is a pretty basic opinion and could also be argued as a fact.
Well, once again, we have the elites completely out of touch with the general public, because I bet you, if someone walked onto the centre of the stadium there at Man United and asked all the audience to put their hands up if they agreed with Ratcliffe, I think you'd have the Mexican wave going right around the place. Because the average British person knows that Ratcliffe is absolutely on the money. The fact that he felt able to say the word colonisation shows you how far the Overton window has already shifted.
Yes.
We're saying things now which even last year, in January of last year, we wouldn't have said. Because people are living daily at the coalface of the dark side of diversity. They see that what he's saying is true. The people that run all these other organisations, they're living in their cosy little bubbles. For them, immigration means having a cheap plumber and a cheap nanny. They don't see the antisocial behaviour that we all see every day. So he's actually absolutely struck a chord on this. It has made us all talk about this, and the more we talk about it, the better it is, I think. So well done to him. I regret that he apologised. I wish that he had the cojones of Elon Musk or J.K. Rowling, other billionaires who are willing to put everything on the line for the principles that they support.
And also, like all of these things, he did apologise, but then all of his detractors said, well, it wasn't a proper apology because he only apologised if people got upset, as opposed to apologising for using the term.
Which is good, exactly. And he must never apologise, because that only emboldens the other side, and they'll never be satisfied with
exactly
that.
Right. Let's have a look at two different sort of opinions on what he did say, because first of all, Rachel Reeves yesterday, who sort of came out of the dark cave that she's been hiding in for the last 2 months and suddenly decided to issue a statement about how proud she is of our diverse British country. Have a look.
Look, Jim Ratcliffe can speak for himself, but the comments that he made yesterday were unacceptable. Our country benefits hugely from its diversity. We see that in our businesses, we see that in our universities, we see that in our cultural life, and we are richer because of the diversity of our country. So I would urge him to apologise for his offensive remarks, which have upset a lot of people, and just frankly do not represent, I think, the views in modern Britain today.
I mean, she says we are richer as a result of our diversity. We're actually, and this is also provable, we're actually poorer because of all the money we're paying out.
We're significantly poorer. I mean, in 2024, the Telegraph reported we spent £10 billion on benefits to foreigners.
Yeah.
7.5 billion alone goes on universal credit to foreigners. You know, benefits should only go to people with citizenship.
Yeah.
You know, citizenship must confer benefits quite literally.
Yes.
And look, barely a week goes past when you don't have some moronic numpty like Rachel Reeves saying diversity is our greatest strength. And I was, well, where's the evidence? Can you actually show me the statistical evidence? Because there is none. I've done 2 lectures on this. People can find it on the New Culture Forum think tank. All the evidence shows that far from being our greatest strength, diversity with multiculturalism is our greatest weakness. It lowers social trust. It makes us more introverted. People stay at home more in their local communities. They don't volunteer. They don't engage with society. Because of that, of course, they vote less, but they become more agitated about politics. And because they don't engage with their local community, you begin to see the deterioration of buildings, public squares, and everything else. It is absolutely a disaster. And what happens is, of course, you get people retiring into ethno-nationalist silos. And unfortunately, the result of that, of course, is that we are segmenting our society. We may be a multiracial society, but everyone is living in their own little pockets.
But a lot of it's ghettoised as well, isn't
That's
it?
what I mean. They're living in their own little pockets. We're becoming not a United Kingdom, but a United Nations. And that's why you're having internal migration. People don't talk about internal migration. People don't like diversity. That's why property prices are so expensive in Cornwall and Devon, because you have a massive exodus from the cities of white people.
Yeah, exactly right. And I mean, I've been speaking to people in the north of England recently as well, who say that, you know, in certain towns in the north of England, the only people who can't afford to move, who are sort of older white people and not particularly well off, say all the time, you know, there's, you know, the house prices have actually fallen here because nobody wants to move in, but the whole town has completely changed in the last 20 years.
And that's why there's so much snobbery here and elitism with those people who are trying to call anyone who raises any alarm about this far-right thugs and the way that they talk about them, because of course the poor people can't afford to leave those areas. So they're stuck there and they're seeing the consequences of antisocial behaviour, people not queuing for buses, you know, littering on the street, now increasingly defecating on the street, all this sort of stuff. Now you can't blame the migrants because that's what they do back home. They're just doing what they've always done. But you know, poor white people can't escape those environments. That's why they're reacting against it. And people living in Islington or in parts of nice Scotland or Cornwall or whatever are all in favour of, the most homogenous areas are in favour of migration because they don't deal with the benefits. And as we say in our new book.
In your new book, yes, which we'll come on to in just one second. I just want to play you quickly a clip from Nigel Farage. He was literally the only politician, you would call mainstream politician yesterday, who defended Sir Jim Ratcliffe. Have a look at this.
Sir Jim Ratcliffe, one of the richest Britons in the world, of course the boss of Ineos and now a major shareholder in Manchester United Football Club, has caused outrage by his comments. So what's he actually said? Well, he said that our population has gone up from 58 million to 70 million, and that with 9 million people of working age on benefits, we don't need mass migration. He said much of the country had been colonised by immigrants. Now that word was a controversial word. And he said, okay, if you don't like the word, we'll tone it down. But just think about this. You ask yourself why public services have diminished. You ask yourself why rents have gone through the roof. The population explosion has done that. And then you look at parts of London, for example, where the road names, the underground signs, aren't just in English, they're in a foreign language as well. 1 million people living in this country don't speak any English at all. 4 million people living in this country barely speak passable English. And that's the point that he was making, that big areas of our towns and cities have been changed into something completely different to what they were, and that it's all making us poorer. And I don't really care if Number 10 is in uproar or if much of mainstream media find his comments too difficult. I believe firmly that Jim Ratcliffe is right. Keen to know what you think.
Nigel Farage there saying he believes that Sir Jim Ratcliffe was right, and he mentions that there's 1 million people in this country who don't speak any English at all. There's 4 million people who don't speak very good English. There's road signs and railway station signs in foreign languages in certain parts of the country. You address all of this in Immigration, the Betrayal of Britain, a book which was, I suppose, in its inception, dreamed up by Peter Whittle, the former sort of luminary figure of the New Culture Forum. Tell us about the book.
Yeah, so this is the fourth book in a series we've done, but it's our most important book, and it was very key for Peter, who really thought immigration was the greatest issue facing the country. It occupies all of our minds at the New Culture Forum, so we thought it was important for people to have a handy resource. You can get copies via our website, newcultureforum.org.uk. But it's a book that everyone can have now, which will equip them with the facts and the figures to confirm what we all know in our gut is true about the state of Britain, the impact of immigration on the NHS, £100 million spent on foreign translation, for example. Over
Which is insane,
billions being spent on foreign nationals using the NHS. But then on crime, 10,000 foreigners in our prison service, the rates at which some communities commit crime at a far higher rate than the white British population. Look at housing, of course. Why is there a housing crisis? Could it be because we've had 1.3 million gross coming into this country on an annual basis in some years? And looking at how you solve things as well, because a big important thing is how do you actually solve the crisis? But we want to equip people with the facts and figures so they can push back against the nonsense. When they meet all of these virtue signalling numpties, they can actually say, actually, you're talking a lot of codswallop. This is the evidence. And the evidence is here. It's easy to read. It's only 140 pages where we eviscerate all of the pro-immigration lobbies. I like to say each chapter in here is a nail in the coffin of the pro-immigration activists.
And it's, each chapter is written by a different author as well, isn't it? So it's a sort of compendium, if you like.
Yeah, we've got Al Mehmet, the chairman of Migration Watch, Rob Bates from the Centre for Migration Control, William Clouston, leader of the SDP. So a broad range of experts giving their expertise on each topic.
Yes. And what I found interesting about the book as well was that one of the things that Ratcliffe was criticised for was getting the numbers wrong, because he talked about, there being 70 million people. I don't think we even know how many people are in this country, because aside from the fact that immigration has absolutely ballooned, as you've pointed out many times in the last 20, 25 years, there are so many people coming into the country illegally that I don't think we're even counting everyone.
No, and actually the best way to find out who's in the country is to look at things like utility bills, Thames Water. These places have a much better understanding of where things are. But let's put it this way. In 1851, only 0.5% of the population was foreign-born. Today, it's 16.6% and growing. By the early 2060s, the white British are going to become an ethnic minority within their own country. And you have to ask yourself, at what point does Britain stop being Britain? If there's only 30% white British, is it still going to be Britain? What are the common cultural things that bind us together going to be at that point? But even more amazingly, somewhere like London, this is amazing. So firstly, 42% of the 10 million foreign-born people in this country arrived in the last decade alone. But 40% of Londoners weren't even born in London. So how can London still be London when people don't actually have any knowledge about the Blitz, the Great Fire of London? They don't know anything about our collective memory.
And also the collective memory is being altered, if you like, by people like Sadiq Khan, who has claimed in the past that, London was built by immigrants. Plainly untrue. Plainly, not supportable by any historical facts. You're a historian, amongst other things. And similarly, you've got this ridiculous situation now where in some parts of the country, and London is included, as you say, the population has completely and utterly changed, and the white people are actually a minority.
Yeah, I feel so sorry for the Cockneys, for example. Whenever I get into a black cab, it's like the last true Londoners. And I often say to them, if the Cockneys were a tribe in the Amazon, the UN would have sent out a special peacekeeping mission to protect them, right? But now they're in the urban jungle, no one cares about what happens to them. London is
Many
the only...
of them have moved to Kent, basically.
But London is the only major city in the world where you've had the indigenous population become an ethnic minority within the space of one generation. It's completely unprecedented, and we go into the details of all of this in the book, and it does change the nature of a town or a city. And from the old mill towns of the north to the heart of our capital city, everyone can see how their own community has changed radically and not in good ways.
No, exactly right. So you've told us where we can get the book, Immigration: The Betrayal of Britain. Just give us that stat that you said to me the other night about how many people have come here within the last 20 odd years compared to the previous 2,000.
We've had more immigration in the last 20 years than in the last 2,000 years. I mean, let's put it like that.
Yeah.
You know, people talk about the Ugandan refugees who came here in the 1970s.
Yeah.
That was very controversial.
Yeah.
That was 28,000 people. We get that about every 6 weeks now. It's on that sort of a level and that sort of a scale. And it's the type of immigration that we're receiving. Also, of course, we're always, you know, we used to get 50,000 people coming here net in the 1980s and 1990s. We've basically got 20 years of immigration in 2023 and 2024. And no society can sustain such rapid demographic change. I would say can survive such rapid demographic change.
No, it's quite an extraordinary situation. Rafe, great to see you. Thank you very
Pleasure.
much indeed. See you again, I'm sure, at the same time next week or something like that. We've got much more to do. Jacob Rees-Mogg coming up very shortly. He's going to visit us here in the studio. We'll be bringing you more of your messages as you send them in. I've just bought the book, Immigration: Betrayal of Britain, says Michael. It's sold out on Amazon twice. No stock at present, apparently.
It's available for pre-order from the very good Old Speak bookshop. But if you go to our website, it links you to this very sound bookshop, Old Speak Books, which basically puts out conservative books, actually. So do give them your support, and you can pre-order there, and on Monday you'll have your book shipped out to you. So just go to our website. You can order it via our website.
Splendid. Excellent stuff. Thank you very much indeed. Should we do some news? Is that what we're going to do next? Yes? Yes. Why not, indeed? Edward Hughes with the news.
Good morning, all. Here's the news with me, Edward Hughes. Friday the 13th in the United Kingdom, February 13th, 2026. What a delightfully ominous way to kick off the weekend. Because if the calendar wasn't already mocking us, the headlines certainly are. Let's dive in, shall we? First up, Sir Keir Starmer clings on like superglue in Downing Street. After dodging what passed for a coup, mostly hot air and a quick U-turn from Scottish Labour's Anna Sarwar, he's now solemnly vowing he's not prepared to walk away from my mandate. How inspiring. Nothing says unbreakable resolve like insisting you're still here while the party eyes the exits. Next up, the Gorton and Denton by-election on the 26th, where Labour could finish a respectable third if things keep going this way. Leadership at its finest. Meanwhile, the Church of England has finally euthanized its endless Living in Love and Faith project. Years of heated debate ending in allowing...
Is that the end of the news? Yeah. It is the end of the news. Listen, it's a bit rough and ready sometimes on the old independent channel. So here we are at the Mike Graham Show. I'm delighted to say that Jacob Rees-Mogg has joined us for the first time ever. Welcome, Jacob, to the home of common sense, or as we call it, the real home of common sense.
The real home. Well, it's very good of you to have me on.
No,
Thank
not
you.
at all. Delighted to have you. We've been talking a lot this morning about Jim Radcliffe, and I know that you were speaking about it yesterday. I saw your comments on the Pamela Tomini podcast. But just before we carry on, and forgive me if you can't hear this, but I don't know whether you've seen Simon Jordan from TalkSport and what he said about it, because obviously he's a football man. And he is one of the few people in what I would call the sort of the woke football area who now is siding with Jim Ratcliffe and saying, well, of course he should be able to say what he wants to say, you know. And how ridiculous is it that Manchester United have kind of come out against him? Have a look at this.
United's website, meantime, celebrates the fact that Manchester is a city famed for its embrace of immigrants. Mm-hmm. So tell me, after you've heard Sir Jim talking on Sky News, what's your reaction?
So let's pare this back a little bit. I think the term of colonisation is probably clumsy. But if you look at the underlying sentiment, put aside the analysis that he's misquoted some figures. Because the population in 2000 was 58 million. The population in the UK is 70 million in 2025, which means we've had a 21% increase, 20 to 21% increase in our population. The population of Europe has gone from 728 million to 744 million, which means Europe as a continent has had a 2% increase in population. You then distill down the German population increase, the Italian, the Spanish, the French. No one has had a population explosion like we have. So to go to the sentiment about the population, irrespective of whether he said 2020 or 2000, he is right. The population explosion, however it's manifested itself, has created a strain on this country. Then you go to the sentiment of the open border policy that various governments have deployed in regards to people coming into this country, and you look at...
Simon Jordan there, the co-presenter of TalkSport's mid-morning show, very successful former owner, in fact, of Crystal Palace Football Club. He, unlike most sort of woke football pundits now, because they're all terrified of saying they don't like women's football, they're all terrified of, anybody who might have an opinion about, Black Lives Matter or taking the knee and all of that. But Simon, very bravely, and I hope it doesn't do him any harm at TalkSport, has basically said that, the word colonisation might have been a bit clumsy, but he has absolutely the right to say it, and he's not wrong.
Yeah, well, look, I don't know anything about football, so I'm the wrong guest for that purpose. But in terms of the conversation, mass migration got out of control. Actually, Rishi Sunak began to control it, except illegal migration is continuing out of control, and even legal is continuing at too high levels. So it needs to be controlled. Colonisation is actually a really interesting word, because if you think right back to the origins of colonies with Naples. Naples is a great Greek city in the Italian peninsula, and it is formed by people going there and forming a community. And what you see with new arrivals is that they tend to go to the same place and form a community. So if we're going to go for strict etymological use of the word colony, I'm not sure Sir Jim Ratcliffe was wrong.
No, indeed. Well, as we just heard from Rafe Mankiw, he's got a new book out, which has come out from the New Culture Forum, in which he describes how, the onset of immigration in the past 20 years or so has been so rapid as to change the face of many parts of Britain. And I know that there are plenty of parts of Britain, I mean, where you are down in Somerset, probably to a lesser extent than places like Bradford or Rochdale or London. But these places have changed irrevocably, haven't they?
And that's really important, because there was this recent thing from DEFRA, one of the more stupid things DEFRA's done recently, saying the countryside was too white.
Yes.
Well, of course it is, because if you get an enormous demographic change, it always starts in towns and in cities and then moves out to the rural areas.
And is that because that's where the work is?
That's where the work is. And most of the people coming in tend to be less well off. They tend to be quite poor. And therefore they're going for, by and large, low-skilled jobs that are jobs within larger communities. There aren't so many of them in rural areas.
Right, and that's, of course, the great myth, isn't it? Rachel Reeves yesterday came out with Keir Starmer to kind of condemn Sir Jim Ratcliffe and his words, and she said that, they were terrible, disgusting, diversity is our strength, it's made us richer. Well, quite
It's
obviously,
not true.
it's not true. It's made us poorer.
It's made us poorer in a number of ways. GDP per capita declined in the last 6 months of last year, but also it's made us poorer because we haven't increased productivity, because we have imported masses and masses of cheap labour, which has meant that companies have had no incentive to add equipment, to mechanise, to automate, and it's kept down the wages of the least well-off in society. So immigration is fine if you are Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer and you're earning £150,000 a year. It's great, it makes your life marginally more comfortable. If you're one of my former constituents living in Radstock and you're on the minimum wage, your minimum wage has been held down by mass migration.
Yeah, indeed. And, when you sort of look as well at what Ratcliffe said, he was also talking about too many people on welfare, some of whom are immigrants, but an awful lot of whom are not. And again, a very valid point to make, that we're having a smaller and smaller group of people now paying more and more tax to support more and more people who are not making anything at all.
Well, Angela Merkel pointed out in 2012 that Europe was 7% of the world's population, then 25% of the world's GDP, and 50% of the world's welfare. And she said this cannot continue. And here we are 14 years later, and it has continued, and all the European economies are failing to grow, other than the smaller ones that have been catching up. But Germany, France and the UK particularly have not grown since 2000 effectively. Right. And this is partly because of mass migration keeping wages down, it's partly because of excess welfare, and it's partly because of our crazy green policies.
Well, quite. I was actually in Whitehall yesterday, and I walked past the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero and thought to myself, crikey, that's a place I'd like to go into and sort of, burn down from the inside. And
well,
just say,
for a glorious 7 weeks, I was the Secretary of State for its previous incarnation, and I was going to get fracking going so that we would have genuinely cheap energy that we are sitting on top of. It's not quite free, but the cost of extraction is very low. You can turn it into electricity extremely efficiently. I don't buy into this panic about net zero, that the climate's always changed and it is indeed changing, but we must deal with that when it happens, rather than thinking we can stop it.
Well, we have the most expensive electricity in the world, which is sort of hard to believe. You know, it seems ridiculous. We've got the North Sea. Even Tony Blair today is saying we should stop this ridiculous banning of North Sea oil exploration, because what we're doing is buying in oil and gas from Norway, who are literally digging it out of the same bed that we could be in.
Yes. It's the first time in history that governments have had a policy of making their peoples poor.
Yeah.
That high energy prices simply make people poor, they stop innovation. All technology is dependent on energy. Just look at this studio and the energy that it's using. Think of AI and the energy that is used to produce AI.
Yeah.
We need cheap energy if we are going to compete. And instead we've decided to become troglodytes.
Well, we discovered today, we've only been here about 4 weeks, and occasionally we wonder why it gets a bit cold in here. And the heating apparently is on a sustainable mechanism by which it supposedly saves energy by switching itself off. And I'm like, well, if that's really the business model, why don't they just shut down the whole place and not bother renting any space to anyone?
But this is completely stupid, because this is making people uncomfortable. And the whole aim of public policy, whether it's been kings or democracies or anybody, is to make the lives of the people they represent more comfortable.
Yeah.
This energy policy is perverse because it's telling people to be less comfortable.
Right.
Also, this energy stuff doesn't work, because what do you do when they turn the central heating down? You buy a little blower heater and you put it on and you warm yourself up.
Yes.
And then you suddenly discover that you're using more energy and more expensive energy than you were when they heated the place properly.
Exactly right. And to go back to the welfare situation, I mean, this government has many faults, which we'll also get onto in a minute, but they don't seem capable of forming any sort of policy around reducing the welfare payments that they're making and in some ways actually just increasing them. And the welfare bill is now so huge as to be unmanageable. I mean, how could it be reduced, do you think?
Well, you need a government that wants to do it and has a majority in Parliament to get it through. And we're now seeing that Sir Keir Starmer is perhaps the worst appointer of people in modern British political history. Indeed, probably ancient British political history.
Yeah.
I can't think of anybody who gets worse. He handpicked most of the Labour MPs.
Yes.
When Tony Blair handpicked Labour MPs, they voted for his agenda.
Right.
When Sir Keir Starmer's done it, they've all turned out to be hard left figures who don't like anything that he's doing and rebel every time there's an opportunity.
Right.
So it is the
Well, he'll blame
incompetence
the
of
vetting
government.
procedure probably,
Of
right?
course, he'll blame somebody else.
Yeah.
Probably blame poor old Chris Wormald, who
Yes,
seems to
indeed.
get it in the neck for nothing very much.
Well, and again, he's wasted £260,000 of our money by paying him off for I know that he was a civil servant before this particular cabinet secretary's job, but he overruled the civil service. I mean, thankfully, once the civil service actually stood up to him and said, hang on a minute, you can't pay this money out. And he just overruled them.
This is really serious, because although I think we probably need to move to a politicised civil service, we haven't. And by law, we have an apolitical civil service. And therefore, for the Prime Minister to sack the Cabinet Secretary is quite an important constitutional move and takes away one of the important safeguards in how we're governed. That it was frustrating as a minister that you found that the civil service didn't always do what you wanted.
Right.
Nonetheless, that's our system. And he's just blown up one of the safeguards.
Yes.
I think people should be quite concerned about that.
Yeah, it's a very interesting point you make, because I was always under the impression, and certainly I spoke to Liz Truss about this, that there were real difficulties in pushing certain policies through because the blob, as they're known, would put a great big roadblock in the way of it. But so is he now making it clear that that is no longer the case?
Well, he'll find it doesn't make any difference, because yes, there is a blob, and yes, there's a bit of a problem with the blob, but most of the problem is that Parliament's passed bad laws, like the Climate Change Act. So I find more often than not, civil servants saying, Minister, you can't do this, not because they didn't like it, didn't know what they liked or not, but because there was an act of Parliament that said you couldn't.
Yes.
And that's where, with a majority of 170, you can change things, but they can't because they're in office but not in power.
And you were saying to Camilla Tominey yesterday that, Keir Starmer, in addition to all of his other faults, has no real moral superiority or even moral kind of representation to make any judgment on what Sir Jim Ratcliffe said or what anybody else says.
Well, dare I say, we have just fallen for Sir Keir Starmer's strategy, because the Ratcliffe stuff is all a dead cat strategy, that he goes for somebody who's very well known, who owns a popular football club, very successful businessman, attacks him completely unreasonably to distract us from the scandal of £260,000 to Cabinet Secretary, of the fact that there's no Cabinet Secretary, there's no Chief of Staff, there's no Head of Communications. Yeah. They've all gone. Downing Street is adrift.
It's rudderless, isn't it?
It's rudderless, they're mired in sleaze, worse than sleaze. David Starkey pointed this out to me, I referred to it as sleaze, and you know what David's like. He said, no, in his Now Uncertain Times, it's not sleaze. Mandelson is corruption.
Yes.
It's much worse. We should be using harsher words rather than sleaze, which we think is a dirty weekend. This isn't sleaze, this is corruption.
Well, clearly from his performance at Prime Minister's Questions, which I think was possibly one of the worst performances I think I've ever seen this Wednesday, where he attacked Ed Davey, for heaven's sake. I mean, I don't agree with Ed Davey on many things, but I thought he made some very good points. And he later kind of had a go at Kemi Badenoch as if to say that appointing somebody to be ambassador to the United States of America, the most important diplomatic job probably in the Foreign Service, who is personal friends and has been for 20-odd years with a paedophile, a convicted paedophile, is more or less the same as Partygate. And you're kind of going, well, what sort of equivalence is that?
Cake. Yes, I mean, it's all ridiculous, but Partygate always was ridiculous.
Yeah, but to try and equate the two things as if they're the same.
It's absurd.
Yeah.
And I think you make the absolutely right point that Mandelson continued his association after Epstein was convicted.
Yes.
I think it's more nuanced in this peer who he created, who supported somebody who'd only been charged.
Yes.
And we do have the right in this country of innocent until proved guilty. And there, I think merging those two cases is unfair on Lord Doyle, is he called? Yeah.
Yeah. Although I suppose you might say it was unwise of Starmer. Once the friend of Lord Doyle had in fact pleaded guilty to some pretty horrible charges.
Well, once he pled guilty, but that comes at a later... He's only at this point charged.
Yes, but nevertheless, I mean, he didn't have to elevate him to the House of Lords.
No, he didn't.
You know,
I'm not defending Starmer's judgment. I'm the last person to do that. I think he's got terrible judgment. I just think, to be fair to Doyle, his behaviour is different because he was supporting somebody who, at the point he was supporting him, was not guilty.
Yes, no, I get that. I don't know if you've had a chance to read Tim Shipman's piece today in The Spectator, which is a very good read.
I'm afraid I get my Spectator in Somerset, and it's always late. I'm sometimes a week behind.
Oh, okay. Well, he's written a very sort of eviscerating piece, having spoken to a lot of people both inside Downing Street and outside, who have worked with Starmer. And I'll just read you this paragraph because I think it sort of sums it up all rather well. Starmer promised change, but the question now is whether he can change. And then this is a quote from a senior figure close to number 10. Fundamentally, the Prime Minister cannot make a decision, cannot stick to a decision, cannot implement a decision, cannot defend that decision when it gets tough, or explain that decision ever.
Yeah.
That's the Prime Minister.
I mean, we have a...
It's shocking, isn't it?
Well, you see, the thing about Keir Starmer is that he's essentially an over-promoted bureaucrat.
Yeah.
And everything he does is according to process.
Yeah.
But when you're Prime Minister, you are the process, and you have to decide, and he can't do that. It's like one of those computers that explodes because it's been overloaded. He's in the exploding computer phase of his career.
But isn't it extraordinary? I mean, I'm sure you know, as I do, many barristers and many lawyers who are, generally speaking, fairly nimble on their feet when it comes to speaking, when it comes to dealing with things. He seems incapable, and I always used to say this when he was leader of the opposition, he seems incapable of kind of inventing on his feet something to say. It's quite often there would be stories that would break when I was doing my show over at Talk at, say, 10 to 12 on a Wednesday. And he wouldn't ask a question about that story because he'd already prepared his questions and he couldn't possibly pivot into something he didn't know about.
Well, there are two different types of lawyers. There are the ones who perform regularly in court and the ones who deal mainly on paper. And he was clearly in the latter category, and therefore everything is very carefully prepared and done meticulously, but always done ahead of time. And the other thing is, the weakness of lawyers is that they're representing whoever they're told to represent. They're not representing their view of the world. And I'm afraid, having been a lawyer for so long, he doesn't have a view of the world, and therefore he needs to be representing somebody, and that was McSweeney, but McSweeney's now gone.
Right.
So he's got no client, effectively.
No. And people said when McSweeney was there that it was really his vision that got them into Downing Street. It was really his kind of campaigning abilities that got them into Parliament as the government. And now without him, there really isn't any point. So I guess the question now is what happens next, and how long has Keir Starmer got? I mean, I think everybody now agrees that, as you say, he's rudderless, he has no authority, he can't even run his own cabinet. The people in the cabinet seem to be pretty much able to do whatever they want. Angela Rayner yesterday came out and suddenly decided to attack his policy on hospitality. So what happens?
What happens? Well, there are two options, really. One is that this is John Major in the 1990s, and it just carries on being rudderless until election, and then Labour gets wiped out. And the other is that they are like the Tories in 2019 to 2024, and they change leader and have somebody who has no mandate. And that's really important, because all the candidates touting themselves around, other than Shabana Mahmood, who won't get it, want to move Labour to the left.
Yeah.
But nobody voted for a hard left Labour Party. And when it was offered to them with Jeremy Corbyn in 2019, they heartily rejected it.
Yes. And because Britain essentially is what a lot of people tell me anyway, is a sort of centrist electorate, if you like, which brings us on to reform and where they are, because a lot of people say that they wanted reform to win, but they're worried that reform is now becoming part of the kind of mainstream political system. Therefore, because of that, they have to be slightly less right-wing than they might want to be.
Well, I don't believe the country is sort of middle muddle, fiddle fuddle centrist. I think it knows what it wants, and it wants to be prosperous, and it wants not to be cold and poor, but to be warm and rich. And that means fundamental reform. It means Thatcherite style reform. Yeah. And I think the country's getting ready for that as times get more difficult. I am worried about reform, particularly how it's governing in local government, because it got in promising cuts.
Yeah.
And it's actually governed like all other local authorities always do. Their local bit seems to have been absorbed by the blob. And that's a concern, because I was hoping they would be more dynamic. But
is that partly because the system is so entrenched that it's difficult to make those cuts? I mean, like with welfare, we never quite finished that sentence about how you would cut welfare. How can you save money in local councils while, for example, social care is such a big problem?
Well, you stop doing the things that you don't have to do. You stop. They did in Kent. They again resurfaced the car park of the council offices.
Well, they said they had to do that for safety purposes.
There you go. But then they're falling for the blob, aren't they? Oh, health and safety. Oh, we've got to do it. It's very important.
Yeah.
They don't push back and say, well, actually, we'll just close the car park and save £30,000. We don't need it.
Yeah.
Councillors can park in the street. They can park it as the people they represent do, park in a local car park and pay the parking charges that the council puts up.
Right.
There are always options. And once you're absorbed by the blob, you come up with these standard lines, we must do it because of X, Y, and Z, instead of saying, well, actually, we're going to think of something different. It's an unwillingness to think of different things. This comes back to welfare. There's one thing I feel very strongly, and that is that welfare benefits, out-of-work benefits, should be frozen for as long as the income tax threshold is frozen.
Yeah.
It is deeply unfair that people in work are getting worse off every year to pay for people who are not in work to get slightly better off or to remain the same.
Yeah.
And so that begins to cut the welfare benefit. You've then got to look at who is entitled and reduce entitlements. And you've got to make sure that work doesn't just pay because you're allowing people to keep more of their benefits when they're in work, but the benefits are not so generous as to make benefits pay.
Yes.
We've got to look at the whole system. I think the country's ready for that because I think they just see people who have made benefits a lifestyle choice, and they're very angry about that.
They are. And you've got to give people an incentive to work rather than not to work. But I mean, I've got youngish children, not so young anymore. One of my sons is about to leave university in May of this year. He's not very hopeful that he's going to be able to get any kind of job, never mind the job that he might want to have because of the degree that he's got. His degree is in music sort of management and, you might term it a sort of a liberal arts degree type thing. There aren't really any jobs for him to do.
Well, I'm sure a son of yours will be very brilliant and will get great jobs. I've actually got one of my sons with me. I've got Alfred with me today.
Welcome, Alfred.
Who's going to be 10 fairly soon. I should get him in to do the interview. He'd probably talk much more sense than I do.
Well, we'll give him a job here.
Excellent. But that's right. The way the economy is being run, graduates are finding that they're not getting the jobs that they anticipated, and lots of people are doing degrees that don't then lead to well-paying jobs.
And they've got massive debts.
And they've got massive debt, which again I discussed with Camilla. And the problem there is the interest rate.
Yeah.
And the interest rate is a false interest rate. It's an unfair interest rate. I don't mind, indeed, I'm in favour of students paying their own tuition fees. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
They're the ones who benefit, and they should decide whether it's worth their while.
Yes.
But the interest rate is fundamentally unfair.
And many kids now are not, because his younger brother, funnily enough, who's 19 now, has decided he doesn't want to go to university because he thinks he's managed to get a job that he's really rather enjoying in London. It's in the sort of Westminster sphere. And he's already, he's got a car, he's got money in his pocket, all the things that a lot of new graduates just don't have, and people at university don't have.
Well, I think more people are making that decision, and I don't think it's a bad one to make. I think universities need to be a commercial success for the people going. They also need to be a commercial success for the universities, and we've probably got too many badly run universities at the moment.
Yes, I think so. Because Tony Blair, again, put in the kind of the building blocks for education as a business and relied too heavily on foreign students, bringing more and more people into the country with more and more dependents who are all still here.
Yes.
Which was a really stupid idea. But finally, back to reform, because a couple of people had sent me pictures of calendars and things saying, before May the 6th, people have to decide if they want to leave the Conservative Party and join Reform. Is that a deadline that you're eyeing up at any point, or are you looking wistfully at it?
No, I'm not. I'm not sure setting deadlines is a helpful thing to do anyway.
Right.
I've never by nature been somebody who, if you try and pressurise me, wishes then to fall in line with the pressure.
I'm a bit like that.
There's some term for it now. I've covered it on GB News on my programme. It's I forget what it's called, but being extremely stubborn and hating being told what to do now has a condition.
Well, I'm told that
I've suffered from that for years.
Well, I suffer from something they call defiance syndrome.
Very
which is
good.
Basically, anybody telling me to do anything, I immediately want to do something else.
I completely agree with that, even if it's what I might have wanted to do. But I don't want to join Reform. I want the right of British politics to come together.
Yeah.
And I want to help that in any way that I can. I think we shouldn't be fighting each other in the next election. We should be cooperating, because the country needs real change. And to get that change, it needs a small c Conservative majority. And Reform's done well, but it hasn't made the breakthrough it hoped to make a year ago or 6 months ago of wiping out the Tory party. Ken Badenoch's doing much better. The Tory result is going up a little at the moment. We just need to cooperate rather than trying to knock each other for six. And I think the best example of somebody defecting to Reform is Danny Kruger, who did it with a degree of charm. And instead of saying everything he'd done in the Tory party was wicked, he said, well, actually, I still like my old Tory friends, and we ought to think of it in that way. I think some of the more recent converts made themselves look rather angry.
Yes, I guess so. But then, so did the Tory party in some ways as well.
I agree with that. I don't think we behaved. I think we should have been more.
A bit more magnanimous.
These are good people. Yeah. They've just decided to do something different.
Yeah, right.
I think the attacking them for always being wicked people. Well, why did we give them senior?
Well, quite.
Yeah,
exactly. A couple of questions are coming in for you. Ian says, please ask Jacob if there's any way we, the electorate, can get an early general election. Is that likely? I mean, a lot of people would like that.
A lot of people would like that, but I think no. I think we should develop a constitutional convention where if you change Prime Minister, you should have a general election. And I've been saying that for some time. I think it's really important, actually, because the individual Prime Minister has a much more personal mandate than was historically the case.
And do you think also that people should have a by-election if they switch parties, for example?
Yes, of course they should.
So all of the people who went from the Tories to Reform.
Of course
Reform,
they
of
should.
course, will argue that that costs too much money.
Well, I think this is absolutely ridiculous. Reform is arguing that it's wrong to cancel the council elections in May, which I agree with them, but it's right not to have by-elections for people who've changed party. The truth is, people at the last election voted for a party and for a party leader. The individual MP hardly makes any difference at all. I think Philip Cowley estimates it makes a 2% difference, and he's the professor of politics at St Mary's University. I mean, he knows his onions. And so I think people who change owe it to their voters to go back to them. I also think, tactically, Reform would have won all these by-elections and would have been able to say, look how popular we are.
Yeah.
So I think the tactics are wrong, but I also think the principle is wrong.
Interesting. Final question, because Lord Viking is one of our very regular contributors. Does Jacob like herons? Now, that's the question. Now, you might have noticed that there's a sort of heron theme going around the studio. And the reason for that is that I live down by the River Thames, sort of opposite Canary Wharf, And I came out of the house one day when I was in the midst of plotting this new beginning for myself to see a huge heron sitting on the railing overlooking the river. And I decided that that was some kind of omen. And I thought, because I've never seen a heron there before, I didn't know there would be one.
This is absolutely brilliant, because this is so like the ancient Romans, who were always looking at which way the birds went. And one of the cleverest things Julius Caesar did was made himself Pontifex Maximus, the high priest, which gave him the power to determine what the omens meant. And if it was not a day that was going well for him, he said, well, the omens say you can't make any decisions today.
Wow.
And he was able to put it off the next day. So I think you have a wonderful lineage to your loving of herons and your study of the omens of birds, the auguries.
Yes.
And I think herons are beautiful
Well, what's
birds.
interesting is that people from all over the world are sending me pictures of herons that they've seen.
Oh, fantastic.
We've got a couple of herons in. One complaint that one's actually more of a crane than a heron. When
there are lots of cranes at Canary Wharf too.
There certainly are. Amazingly, I don't know who's paying for them to be built. But one of the things that I found out was that in lots of different cultures, the heron is a harbinger of new beginnings. It's something that...
well, of course, yes. And the crane brings the baby and all of that, yes.
It's all of that. So
That's how I got 6 children. The crane just delivered them. It was quite remarkable.
That's incredible. Well, Somerset is a weird place.
It's not a weird place. It's God's own county, I'll have you know.
I used to live in Devizes. I know very well how strange it is. Anyway, listen, Jacob, great to see you.
It's an absolute pleasure. And I'm really excited about what you're doing. I think it is an exciting and interesting development in the media world, and I know you're doing extremely well.
We're doing really well, and we're very grateful to all the people watching us now. Record numbers again this week. More and more great guests coming in as well. So we look forward to the future with our eyes open and arms open as well. Jacob, thank you very much indeed.
Very nice to see you. Thank you.
Jacob Rees-Mogg, ladies and gentlemen.
Alfred's been vision mixing, by the way.
Sorry? Alfred.
Excellent.
He's already preparing. Well, listen, we need a few more hands on deck. So the busier we get, by all means, leave school and just come and work here. And it will make it worth your while. Thank you very much to Charlotte, who's been here all the last couple of days. Thanks to Pooch, of course. Thanks to all of you. Laura Jane says, does the heron have a name? Don't start on that because, you know, we get in all... We had Eva Heron. We had Hieronymus Bosch. You know, we've got lots of different things going on there. Heron Mirren, that was another one. Anyway, listen, we got Plank of the Week coming up tonight at 7 o'clock. I can't believe we've finished the show. I don't really want to stop, actually. I think one of these days we might just do a marathon 7-hour session or something. This is the Mike Graham Show. It is the real home of common sense. Thanks to all the guests that we've had this week. And we'll see you tonight at 7 and then back again tomorrow night with Plonk of the Week. And then Monday, of course, 7 a.m, bright and early. Who knows? Who's going to be in charge of the country? Possibly no one. See you then.
Remember, despite all of the others out there, it's always the others. Don't be a plank.